Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me. Yeah, why would you bet on Goliath when we got Bet David? Valuetainment, giving values contagious. This world of entrepreneurs, we get no value to hate it. How they run, homie, look what I become. I'm the one.
All right, so we have typically Adam wears his same outfit every day. Today, Adam's got a new do. I don't know if you guys see what Adam looks like today. He's got a new do because Adam is late. Again, he's late. And everybody that's watching this, we're early, and we're starting early, and we have none other than Eric Trump in the house.
You can't be late in life, guys.
Nope.
Don't be late in life.
No.
Yeah.
So embarrassing. We're
There
so
you go.
sorry.
Anyways, he'll walk in here in a minute, and that's it. That's a perfect picture of him.
Be on time to vote, be on
like.
time for meetings,
So,
be on time.
Eric, obviously, there's not a lot going on with you guys right now.
Nothing.
Not a lot with the
Very
family.
quiet.
I'm sure it's very slow, not a lot of activity. Tell me this. Walk me through this. When does the day start? What's your day look like from the morning till midnight? What's the day look like for the Trump family?
Well, listen, guys, remember, outside of politics, and I'm heavily involved in politics, I also run a big company. So my day starts early, and we're not much, we're not big sleepers in our family. My father's not a big sleeper. I'm not a big sleeper. I'm normally a 5 a.m. guy, go to the gym, get to it, very, very early and, getting very late. And the last 2 nights we've come in at 1 o'clock in the morning and, come back from big fundraisers, big events. I was with him all over Georgia, North Carolina. I've been doing events all over the country. And so, no, guys, not a lot of sleep now between, obviously, kind of campaign schedule and, the final, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now, 12 days. And then obviously, the company, we've got some of the greatest hotels all over the world and golf courses and residential buildings, commercial buildings, literally on every corner of the globe. And so not a whole lot of sleep in our family.
And you're the EVP, right? You're the EVP of the entire organization.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Okay, so question with you there, because I got 4 kids and, we got businesses that we're running. How was the family conversations when you guys were kids, younger? Yeah. Think 10, 12, 13, 14 years old, 15 years old. Hey, one day you're going to run this and one day you're going to do that. What were those conversations like with Pops?
No, actually, almost the exact opposite of that. We were thrown on construction sites, Don and I, at a very, very young age, right? About 11, started making, less than minimum wage, and I was pulling conduit, and I was doing HVAC work, tile work, concrete work, everything that you can possibly imagine, right? And I loved it, but it was, you're going to work with the stonemasons. These are guys, tough Italian guys. If you wore gloves, they would laugh at you. I mean, it's just, your little prepubescent hands are going to get, work hard in today, little boy. And, these.
So they were tough on you guys.
Oh, these guys were freaking tough.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are no bullshit, right? They're, these are the real deal. These are hardened, tough guys. And, by the way, so many of them still work in the company today and dear friends and worked for us forever. And they're really kind of family of ours. But no, this is real deal stuff. And, if you wanted a fishing rod, guess what? Honey, go out and work for it. Go dig a hole, go learn how to, run backhoes, bulldozers, chainsaws. And it's what we did every single summer. And it was the best thing that ever happened. And so I don't think there was any, hey, when you come into the business, it's work, earn it, and slowly grow your way in the company. And if you're really good at what you do, you can eventually have, the keys. And I don't even think that was stated. It was one of these things that we went out and we busted our butts every single day. And trust me, Donald Trump, right? He's no pushover. If we weren't really good at what we did, if we didn't care, if we didn't work our tail off, we wouldn't be in the seat that we were in. Okay. I mean, there's no way. There's too much riding on it.
Two questions with that. So when I study the Kennedy family, specifically Joseph Kennedy, right? And even Michael Jordan, when he hears stories about him when he was younger, his older brother, the dad, would pin them against each other, competition. And Michael in The Last Dance, I don't know what scene it was, when he says, when I was a kid and I was going through it, and my dad was saying, you don't know what to do. You don't know how to compete. You just go play outside. Let us grown men do this. And so I wanted to kill these guys, right? My own, the level of competition. He says, but I realized I needed to go through that phase of getting my skin to be thick before I became who I was. Was dad doing that, or did he leave it to everybody else to do it?
There was definitely friendly competition between Don, Ivanka, and I. We're closest friends. We're inseparable, right? I mean, we have a really inseparable family. We, no division, which is actually hard to believe going through the political nonsense, right? I mean, they've done everything they could to kind of break up the family and divide us and pin everybody against each other. But what he was actually remarkable at, he almost took a different approach. He'd give you tasks that were so insurmountable. You realize he kind of laddered them, right? But I was, 24 years old. I'd get thrown into, build that building, and by the way, You're in charge. Make good decisions. I'd go to him oftentimes. Hey, I've got a problem. You know, what's the answer? And he would kind of talk in a little bit of a circle, but then at the end of his, you figure it out. You figure it out. And don't get me wrong, if I was going to go grossly awry, he would have, course corrected immediately. But he wanted people. For him, it was never about the PhDs. It was never about the resume. It was guys who would go out there and bust their butts, bust their asses, who worked, who had common sense, who people liked, who would go out there and fight. We have people in our company that were literally drivers. They took me to school as a kid, who are general managers of some of the biggest hotels in the country, because these guys always had their hand up. And Donald Trump was always this guy. You keep your hand in the air, right? I mean, driver. We were bringing architects out to Las Vegas when we did our big hotel out there, right? 64 stories on the Strip, right across from the Wynn. Amazing building. Hey, I'll take them out. This driver, I'll take the architects out, no problem. A couple weeks later, we're getting financing and we're going through the whole planning process. Hey, I'll take those bankers out. I'll show them site. I'll take them through the plans that we have. The guy always just had his hand up, and guess what? 15 years later, 20 years later, he's running a several $1 billion building that's one of the biggest in Las Vegas, and this is a guy who really started as a driver. And it was never about the guys who graduated from Yale and Princeton. It was about the guys who worked hard, who were no BS, who were honest, who were loyal, who always had their hand up, and very different. I mean, and by the way, one other thing. He instilled confidence in people who otherwise might have not had confidence in themselves, and he would build them up. Brian's the greatest. He does the greatest job. This guy works hard on everybody. Everybody loves this guy. You watch, this guy's going to get the project done on time, under budget, and he'd build up their personality where they actually believed in themselves, where otherwise they would have said, "Hey, I'm just not qualified for that." I mean, how many times have you heard that across your life? And when in reality, they were almost the most qualified. Mm-hmm. In a crazy way. They had the street smarts. They had the. It's now he was a remarkable guy. He's made so many careers, remarkable boss. But you better believe when we were 14 years old, it wasn't, hey, when you take over the company one day. No, go out and dig that damn hole and work for it.
I was in Vermont visiting this insurance company called National Life Group, and it was showing this person's been here for 38 years. This person's been here for 30 years, 28 years. Who are some of the longest standing employees within the organization, and what are the timelines?
Well, if you haven't been in our company for 20 years, you're like a junior, very, very junior paper. I mean, I always say, you make it the first year with us and we love you, you're in for life. And you walk down the hall of our company, every single person, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. I mean, it's a remarkable thing. And so many people who came through, I hate hiring from outside. I hate it. It drives me crazy because you can never learn who a person is on a resume. You just don't. And I'd much rather have somebody that started as a busboy and worked his way into kind of being an F&B director, and then kind of worked his way into assistant general manager, and then you take that person, you put them in another property, they succeed every single time because their heart and soul, their work ethic, I mean, they've just been tested over and over and over, and by the way, they're the people who are most appreciative. I mean, think about the kind of FU it sends throughout corporate culture. When somebody's worked in a company for 15 years and they've rose the ranks, and then you jump ahead of them and you go grab some guy, some stiff from Ritz-Carlton or something along those lines, and you bring them in and you totally jump over them. I try never to do that. And my father was the same way. He always liked hiring from within.
How many people over 20 years, if you were to give a number?
Tens of thousands.
Wow.
I mean, listen, guys, we probably have 6,000 to 7,000 people in our company right now, right across, and growing awfully quickly. And but people whose careers he's made. I mean, it's remarkable. And by the way, people who would have never otherwise gotten jobs, and this is going to sound a little bit bad, so but 1980s, he was giving, very construction, very male-dominated industry in New York. I mean, very few females, and made many of his project managers female. He never gets any credit for that, and they were killers, and they went out and they did unbelievable things and built some, and he was always willing to just give whoever was the best person, whoever had their hand up, whoever would ever be that killer, who would ever work, kind of 24 hours a day to prove themselves. Hey, by the way, welcome in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have you,
I'm so sorry, Eric. Like this.
Now the audience knows.
Yes.
Now they know.
Eric.
Yes,
I mean,
always me.
Adam, Eric is here. He's trying to be professional.
God,
he was
this
early.
guy.
I mean, I'm sorry to the audience.
You would assume he would give some respect.
Some
but
respect.
It is what it is.
He came early. The guy's
Allow me to give a little respect then, because I'm going to blame somebody for me being late.
Who?
Your father.
Why?
Because we've been having such an amazing time at Mar-a-Lago the last 2 nights.
Yeah.
I've never been.
A little tired.
And no, I don't drink anymore thanks to this guy. Zero drinking. a lot of YMCAing, a lot of amazing movies, a lot of amazing people. What a place, this Mar-a-Lago, gotta tell you. And my apologies
Put your
for being late.
headset on.
Get your headset on.
Great conversation.
Thank you for being
Don't
here. I've been
interrupt.
listening.
Let us
Yeah.
have the conversation. Going back to it. Okay. So the idea during dinner, because dinner is a lot of, you learn a lot about families during dinner, conversations. So if we were to take 100 dinners and we were to run data to say, what are the top 10 most common conversations that would come up? Is it sports? Which team? Is it movies? Is it music? Is it business? Is it real estate? What were some of the common conversations? Again, when you were a kid, right? I'm not talking 20 plus. I'm talking 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 during that age.
So he's always been a guy who's been myopically, and I think it's a family. First of all, great sense of humor, right? We like to laugh. We like to poke fun. I mean, a lot of, kind of shit talk, for lack of a better term, right? Against all of us. And
New Yorkers. You guys are New Yorkers.
Yeah, 100%. You get it, right? But I mean, we're a very, very close family, but we're also a very alpha family, right? Very kind of competitive family. We have a lot of fun, and we're all probably loud in our own ways. Everybody wants the stage. Everybody wants the microphone. So you get a lot of that at our table. It's probably no different than your tables, right? But I think the conversation always kind of revolved. He was very myopically focused on whatever he was doing at the time, right? In the casino years, in the early years, I mean, he was myopically focused on casinos, right? And everything would be about the casino business and building the casinos. And is Michael Jackson going to show up today? Is Hulk Hogan going to show up today? What event you have, and when that moved later on to the hotels, the golf courses, that became kind of the focus. When we got into The Apprentice, The Apprentice became the. And it was a certain way of actually, I think maybe, psychologically honing yourself, where you just dig so deep into whatever you want to focus on that it ultimately becomes a success because you're just so impassioned about it. But I think that conversation over the course of time, moved from kind of, from focus to focus. Certainly when we got into politics, real estate became a much smaller conversation at the dinner table. And guess what? It's much more of a political conversation. Can you believe this? Can you believe this nonsense, right? And so it's always how he actually, I think, honed himself and got many of kind of the talking points and kind of, grounded his convictions in whatever he was doing in the moment.
What qualities did he dislike the most? Like, if I'm talking about victimhood, blame, what was it when he's looking at somebody doesn't make it, somebody feels an enemy he goes up against, an opponent, somebody he watches in sports? Were there any qualities, but like, if you want to fail in life, here's the three things.
Yeah, laziness. He had no tolerance for lazy, right? And he could always respect somebody who was a hard fighter on the other side of the table, but as somebody who fought, he always liked the fighter. He never liked the lazy person. He wanted the person to be motivated. I mean, he'll call me in the morning, and I'm an early guy, and I'm kind of a late guy, and honey, it'll be 5:30 in the morning. Honey, are you awake? Yeah, I'm speaking to you. I'm awake. And he'll call me that same night, 11:45. Honey, are you awake? Yeah, I'm awake. And he's called me a couple times, right? It's 10:30. You pass out on. Honey, did I catch you? You're sleeping. You're not allowed to be sleeping. I'm a guy that gets 4 hours of sleep at night, right? I'm a guy who travels on a plane 210 days a year, and you're literally busting my chops for. But no, he's remarkable. He likes hard workers. He likes people who have passion. And for anything, and I'm the same way. I like people who have. I don't care if you're into knitting. If you are truly passionate about something and you want to be a master of that craft. I just find those people kind of fascinating. He always did too. He's the guy who'd pull up, he'd see a stonemason on the side of the road. He'd be building an incredible wall. He'd pull up to him. That's the most incredible stone wall I've ever seen. Is that bluestone? Is that flagstone? Do you believe in dry packing? What kind of concrete do you use? I mean, he's the guy who'd always get so myopic, and he would love to dig into the minds of people who are truly kind of, captains of industry. They might not be, captains of industry in the big sense, but people who truly knew their trade and knew that trade better than anybody and were perfectionists. And he always loved those people. It's kind of why I call him sometimes the blue collar billionaire, right? I mean, he always did really well with, go up to that electrician, hey, bud, are we on schedule? Tell me about this job. What's going right? This is the guy that's installing electrical outlet. This isn't the guy that's running the company. He learned more from those guys than he did from certainly any day from the guys who are actually, running those organizations.
How about behind closed doors? You were apprentice. You've done a lot of deals. You've seen him negotiate. If you were to say a couple things, his go-to when it comes down to negotiations, he'll do X, Y, Z. What is his approach? I mean, I've read Art of the Deal. We've seen some of the stuff he said on The Apprentice, but from your perspective.
Negotiate everything. I mean, he was always a tough negotiator. He was a fair negotiator, but he was a tough negotiator. He's a guy who expected quality. I remember as kids, and really my whole life, and I might actually be worse at this point, to tell you the truth, but we'd be walking through a casino as a little kid. he would stop a caravan of people because he would see a little paint drip on a wall, that was so insignificant that no one would ever point it out, and he would make a spectacle out of it, right? And what that was doing was actually it was conditioning people to be perfectionists. Don't have that paint drip, right? Don't have that burnt out bulb. People notice these little details, and it made the teams substantially better. And it's kind of one of the reasons we have the quality that we do in our company. But so oftentimes I'll show up at our properties, I'll walk through the loading dock. Our lobbies are going to be perfect every single time, but I want to see every mechanical room. I want to make sure that there's no dust on an HVAC system and kind of a back closet. They've got to be perfectly painted, well lit. They've got to be immaculate. And the way you conduct yourself kind of back at house is obviously a good transfer over the way you interact with guests and, the way you hold yourself. And, but no, he was a perfectionist, and he's, very kind of, OCD in terms of detail, and, tough negotiator, and, a guy who really, beyond anything, I think a great cheerleader. And I think you see that in politics, certainly, but, he cheerleads for things that he believes in. I want America to be the greatest country in the world. We're going to have the best economy. We're going to have the lowest taxes. We're going to have the greatest military. Our vets are going to be, put first. We're not going to let these companies rip us off and, screw us all around the world. We're going to renegotiate these deals. China's not going to, get away with murder anymore. But he did that in business as well, right? Turnberry's the greatest golf course. We're building something that's better than anything in the world. And he meant it, right? But he was also willing to say it, right? He was always a great cheerleader, and frankly, to the political side of this conversation, it's something that I think this country is missing in a big way. We don't have cheerleaders anymore.
I read this book, 38 Letters John D. Rockefeller wrote his son. Incredible book. I mean, you won't be able to put it down. It's insane. And I think it's like chapter 4, for letter 4 or 5, where he says, "Dear John, I have some terrible news to give you today. Mr. Benson, my greatest rival, died today." And he goes through the whole story, right? Who were some of your father's greatest rivals that you've seen?
Oh, wow. He's had a lot of rivals over the years,
Of
right?
course,
I mean,
yeah.
Going into the casino world, all the casinos were rivals because they were all competing over, obviously, a very limited amount of licenses. You go into New York, everybody wanted the trophy sites, and so you name it, both individuals and kind of, public companies. I mean, real estate's cutthroat. I mean, it's incredibly cutthroat. And so, I think in a certain way, it actually kind of mastered the craft going into to politics. What I will say is as cutthroat as real estate is, it's a pittance compared to politics, right? Because you can have two people that are fundamentally, not aligned, meaning in terms of beliefs. You could have Bernie Sanders and you could have Donald Trump. But in a capitalist world, they'll work together to create the greatest product, to do it better than anybody, to compete, harder. And they can align themselves. In a political world, they can't, right? It's power is become so corrupting in this country that, and I think it's why you see kind of political rivalries that are so much more fierce than you could ever probably see in a capitalistic world. Two capitalists can come together for the reason of, again, capitalism. Nancy Pelosi will never give up her power. She'll never give up that, incredible white marble office. She wants to hold on to that in perpetuity, right? And that power becomes very corrupting. And I think that's why you truly see kind of these rivalries, the competition in politics that's unlike anything that you probably see in the commercial space.
Well, you see that. I mean, but publicly, who were some of the ones that you would say? I'm talking specific like business. Were there, like NFL when he was trying to, buy a team, the Buffalo Bills, or was it win the licensing in Las Vegas?
Certainly, Carl Icahn was probably a great competitor. It's certainly win because they competed against each other. And what's funny is, he's dear friends with Carl now, right? He's dear friends with Steve. Certainly, I mean, went in, tried to buy the Buffalo Bills, and probably the NFL and kind of the powers to be there. And I mean, every developer in New York, whether it be the Relateds, and again, these guys are all our best friends now. But I mean, that's just the way of the world. It's no different than you compete against other media outlets every single day, and many of them are your friends. But listen, life is cutthroat, especially in that world. New York real estate was tough, and frankly, you're competing against contractors as well. Who oftentimes have limited supply, and you need to convince them to do your projects versus others. I mean, in that world, you're in competition with everyone.
Will there ever be a time where you're saying these rivals, Hillary Clinton will be a best friend? Will there ever come a time where you guys will be going to dinner as a family and Chelsea's sitting there and Bill's sitting there? You say, hey, what do you think about the Yankees, Dodgers? Do you think that day will be in the future?
I think very few. There are people I have tremendous respect for on the other side of the aisle. Georgina Bloomberg, great girl, unbelievable girl, and obviously he ran against my father, and he spent $2 billion. I think I don't think he got one delegate. It's funny, actually he did. He got Guam. And actually, if you took the $2 billion he spent on the race, he could have bought all the private real estate in Guam and had the vote, and he could have owned it. And I always found that. But Georgina's an amazing girl. I can never say anything bad about her. And there are people on that side of the aisle. I listen, absolutely. It does become deeply personal with Kamala's when they're coming out calling you Hitler and fascist, right? It's kind of hard. It's different if two people are competing for a site on 57th and 5th, and if somebody's willing to pay $30 million and the next guy's willing to pay $31 million and you lose the thing, right? It's hard to have animosity towards something when they literally spend the last 10 years trying to throw me in jail for doing nothing wrong. I've never gotten so much as a speeding ticket. I think it's a lot harder to mend that kind of relationship, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. I got some stories I want to get into with you. I guess before we go into the stories today, we got a lot of them. Obviously, I think according to MSNBC yesterday, Anderson Cooper endorsed your father.
I think so.
According to MSNBC, and he had to even explain himself. We'll talk about that. We got to, who is the one from Mika, right? That she,
Mika Brzezinski.
unfortunately, she had a big rough day yesterday. A few other people will show the reaction to that.
Conniption's
but
a great
before going
word.
into this, you guys are in New York. Were the Trumps Yankees or Mets? I mean, is it
He's
a
a
Yankee family?
Of course, we're Yankees.
Okay,
Yankees,
so
baby.
tell us some stories about Steinbrenner going to the suites. Who's there? Did you see some of the greats? Who were in the suites?
All right, let me tell you, I've got the greatest Steinbrenner story. So he loved my father, and my father loved him. And he was, by the way, you want to talk about an ultimate competitor? This guy was like the ultimate competitor. Great family, great everything. And so I used to go to the games, and you'd have, Joe DiMaggio. I remember this, right? He'd always kind of be sitting there, oftentimes by himself. You had Giuliani.
Interesting.
You'd Henry Kissinger, and I guess he was just a massive Yankees fan, but I remember Henry Kissinger in the box all the time, and then it was like my father and I. Oftentimes, you had a lot of empty seats in the boxes, because obviously Steinbrenner took this seriously. This was not like an entertainment party. I remember you'd see these great batters, right, and they would strike out. They were batting, 320 or whatever it was. And you would literally have Steinbrenner go grab the red phone in the big box, and he would call out to the dugout, "I want that mother effer gone. He's no freaking
Oh my
good.
God.
We pay this guy too much." You'd have like Jeter, right? I mean, Jeter's up at bat. He screws up one time. He doesn't hit. Yeah, I want that damn guy gone. He's no freaking good.
Oh my God.
And it was beautiful, right? I mean, I don't think I figured out the game of life back then.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was just instilling excellence in these people, right? And he demanded perfection. And you looked at the Yankees streak over that period of time. I mean, they won every second. They were unstoppable. And you want to talk about a home team, but he was a tough cookie. I mean, he was a tough cookie. And God bless, I love that. And in so many ways, I see my father in him. I think it's one of the reasons that they kind of got along. Expected perfection. Tough as hell, and it was a beautiful thing. I mean, I don't think there's many team owners in history that even remotely rival to what Steinbrenner did. It's
Maybe Jerry Buss on the NBA side. He won 10 in 33 years, but not
27.
Jerry was not but 27 is all time.
Yeah, of course.
This guy did 10 and 33, but Jerry wasn't the personality that Steinbrenner was.
Oh, of course.
Steinbrenner was made for TV. Yeah. I mean, some of the stuff that he was amazing.
Oh, by the way, and they would have, or you remember the old clips. I mean, they would zoom in on the box, and they would have him on the phone. He's shouting into the phone, and they'd have the split screen of, the poor general manager at the time who's just getting reamed out. I mean, he's batter. The guy was batting like 319 or whatever the hell it is, and he's reaming the guy out because he didn't make one play. It was a remarkable thing, whereas most of the owners would be up in the box kind of clapping. Okay, better luck next time, buddy, right? And I mean, he just kept that constant pressure, and it was an amazing thing to watch as a kid. Again, I'm not sure I fully understood the game at the time. I was too young. But kind of looking back, I mean, I remember those moments vividly, and he was just a remarkable owner.
Wow, is there a prediction for Yankees-Dodgers?
Oh, of course I'm going to go with Yankees.
Okay.
Come on.
All right. Well, we're excited to see what happens. Having said that, we got a lot of stories we're going to go through today. We're going to talk about what Anderson Cooper did, his town hall, and then having to explain himself to everybody. And even Charlemagne the God is sitting there, chewing him out, saying, "You guys spend way too much time talking about whether Kamala's black or not instead of actually." Anderson, what are you talking about? I'm doing my job. I'm not like the MSNBC guys that get the blow dry, whatever you call it,
Yeah,
high paid. I'm high paid as well. I thought it was a great clip. We'll show that. We got a few other things that happened that we'll go through. Rob, what clips do you have that we want to go through? That's one of them. Keith Olbermann saying Elon Musk should be deported, which is always exciting to hear that guy.
Yeah, he's
General
lost it.
Kelly, he's saying a few things. I want to hear your thoughts on him. Hunter Biden pardon, which was very interesting to bring that up. The trend, the Aragua, the Venezuelans, what's happening with New York with 600 of them. Voter fraud, how do you prevent that? A Jamie Raskin video I want to get from you from a couple months ago when he said, if they win, we're going to use January 6th, 2025. I'll get your reaction on that. And then a few other stories that we have here. And obviously tonight is the big night in Houston. The great Beyonce is performing. Once she performs, it's over. I mean, it's like Republicans are going to be running to vote for Kamala after Beyonce.
I can't change my vote.
I thought it was over when Samuel L. Jackson endorsed.
Whoa, that was a done deal. But no, Eminem dropped the ball when he did his thing. It was over. But let me just kind of go through this, guys. We did this yesterday. Tonight it ends at midnight. I just want to remind everybody. Next week we're running a sweepstake for next week. The big game next week, Game 5 in New York against LA. October 30th, and this is what we're doing. For every dollar spent on merch, vtmerch.com, we got 15 new hats. This is officially the number one selling new hat that came about. We got a bunch of other ones there. The polo shirts are going left and right, but for every dollar you spend on merch, up to $1,000, your name will go in the raffle. And tomorrow, it will go in the sweepstakes, and then tomorrow we will pull a name, and one of you will be joining us next Wednesday, October 30th at Game 5, and we're excited about it. But it ends tonight, Tom, if I'm not mistaken, at midnight. Do you have any other thing? And by the way, we'll get you one ticket. You'll be with us, one seat when you join us, and on top of that, $2,500 for flight and room. And Tom, maybe if you got any other thing to add to it.
We've got the legal stuff because this is the United States of America and lawyers are everywhere. And we've got one too. No purchase necessary for the PBD Podcast 2024 Baseball Sweepstakes, sponsored by Valuetainment and open only to legal residents of the United States and District of Columbia, 18 years and older. Entry deadline again tonight, October 25th at 11:59, midnight tonight. For full entry and rules, visit vtmerch.com where you can buy the merchandise. $1 spent, one entry in the contest, up to $1,000 spent. And you can also find it in the description for this episode of the podcast found on the PBD Podcast channel on YouTube. Void where prohibited by law.
There you go. So go to vtmerch.com and there's a QR code. Let's get right into it. Rob, can you pull up the Anderson Cooper clip? So Anderson Cooper does a town hall with Kamala. Doesn't go well, right? She even was asked, do you have the clip, Rob, when she's asked the question about, I don't know everything, and some of the stuff I have to go back and study and research and learn. I don't know if you saw that clip or not.
I can find it. And she was being a little condescending. She goes, Anderson, Anderson.
Right. Well, I mean, there is this part when guys are reacting to it saying, wait a minute, you've been a vice president for all these years, and you're saying you don't have the answer? And she said, yeah, I got to go back and do some research. Is that the one, Rob, or is it a different one?
That was when they asked if there's any mistakes that she's made.
No, not that one. So why don't you play the clip of Anderson Cooper reacting, and again, in the interim, we'll find a clip. So this is him being chewed out. Go ahead and play this clip. Go for it.
Where, you know what, I got so many, I don't look at comments about myself, but I was looking up some comments about my Grief podcast, and I came across this whole inundation from people who are Harris supporters saying to me online today, like, how dare you, what a betrayal that you would ask her these questions.
No,
and I'm like,
your job.
You misunderstand what my job is. I'm not on MSNBC, and no disrespect, what they do is, they're very talented. But I don't watch it. I'm not interested in watching what these overpaid blow-dried anchors think. And I include myself in that overpaid blow-dried, although I don't blow-dry. I am overpaid. But I'm not interested in the anchor's opinion. I'm interested in facts and letting the viewers make up their own mind. So anyway, I'm sorry this devolved into something else. But
I like
this country.
How do you process this, Eric?
Listen, guys, it's a joke. I mean, this is the person that's running the United States of America. This is a person who is sitting on the largest nuclear stockpile in the world. This is a person, you have President Xi out there that wants to eat our lunch. Economically, militarily, they want to win the war against the United States, guys, without there ever being a shot fired, right? And just make no mistake about it. And you have a person who literally can't get through a sentence. You have a person who doesn't understand basic taxation in this country. You have it's insane, and you have an entire mainstream media that's covering up for her. And you know, guys, it's actually the greatest thing, Patrick. It's the greatest thing for you because the mainstream media in this country is shooting itself in the head. No one trusts it anymore, right? Anderson Cooper sits in a building in Columbus Circle with thousands of people. The overhead is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars every single year, and they have 300,000 listeners. I mean, they've got no one. It's not even worth going on the show. Versus independent guys like you that aren't being told what to say by kind of, corporate America who's pulling in tens and tens and tens of millions of listeners. People don't trust them anymore. And the more they carry on these games, I think the better, the worse they're certainly going to do, the better you're going to do. But listen, guys, it's an embarrassment. That whole town hall was an embarrassment. I mean, she couldn't name one self-deprecating fact about herself, which I think is actually the clip that you were trying to play, where she goes, one self-deprecating thing about me is sometimes I have to go back and do research, and I mean, it didn't make sense. You're sitting there saying, how is this person going to deal with Putin? How is this person going to solve wars? How is this person going to bring Russia and Ukraine together, a conflict that we've spent $200 billion on, millions of lives at this point, destroyed cities, and she can't answer a question from a woman about taxation in the United States of America. Yet this is the commander in chief. Guys, this is the United States of America. We can do a hell of a lot better than this. And, but the fact is they give her a free pass for just about everything. And remember one thing, the Washington Post, 10 weeks ago, right before they threw Biden out of office, was literally encouraging her to drop out of the race for the benefit of the Democratic Party. And then all of a sudden, she becomes the anointed one in 18 hours. Tell me that wasn't a whole setup. I mean, she had 4,700 delegates lined up.
And 40 days of interview embargo where she didn't go any interview, where she had 98% positive
But she had
coverage.
4,700 delegates lined up perfectly in her camp in 17 hours. No one could do that. And then all of a sudden the media changes their tune. She's like the modern day Margaret Thatcher of the United States. Give me a break. No one buys this nonsense. And it's infuriating to see. It's infuriating because I'm a guy who just loves red, white, and blue. Forget about the fact that I'm in the fight, but I love this country. And this is probably the least qualified person it's by far the least qualified person we've ever had run for this office.
You just nailed it, Eric. She's not supposed to be here. The debate where your father just buried Biden once and for all, that was the panic in the DNC. We're like, oh my God. And then they had to prop her up. She didn't expect to be in this limelight. I didn't think so. They were going to be riding with Biden. Even Adam, we made bets where we're like, no, there's no way he's winning. He's doing it. That debate ruined everything for them. She's the reason she's like this. She didn't expect to be here.
How pissed off do you think Biden is right now?
Oh, it's furious.
I mean, I would bet serious money that Biden actually secretly votes for Trump at this point. I mean, it was like the greatest hostile takeover, and he got so bamboozled, and they all convinced him that his legacy would be cemented in the fact that he graciously dropped out.
So you saw the lip reading from the Ethel Kennedy funeral, right?
Now he goes down as a guy who's listen, he lost cognition, he lost everything. But then he also goes down as a guy who might have picked the dumbest VP in the history of the country, and one who cannot stand on her own, and one, God forbid something would have happened to him, could not have run this country. And in a certain way, I actually think it's just it's almost like a double kill. It's
Hey Eric, it seems like they're about to go from desperate to dire situation in the Democratic Party. Like it seems as if your dad, Donald J. Trump, is almost in a flow state right now. Like when you're in sports, you're humming, you're humming on all cylinders. He did the McDonald's thing. The Al Smith dinner was hilarious. He's doing he's going on the biggest podcast in the world. PBD is going to be on Rogan. He's in this flow state right now. When we were there at Mar-a-Lago, the YMCA, he's speaking just with confidence. Whereas Kamala, it's almost a state of desperation. Yeah. It's a state of fear. So 10 days out, I mean, what stories could even break at this point that could put any damage to the campaign at this point? Like, what are you guys doing on your end? Because I don't even know if it's about offense, defense at this point. What are you guys doing being like, guys, we're 10 days out? Yeah. I don't know if you saw the news, not just the Electoral College. I think Trump is now tied with Kamala on the popular vote.
Yeah, they tied.
The Republicans haven't won the popular vote in I don't know how many years. So you guys kind of must have this. 10 days out, what can you guys do to be like, hold down the ship, guys. 10 days left. What more can they do?
Well, honestly, all it is go out and vote, right? At the end of the day, everybody has to get out and vote, and you can never take these people for granted. You cannot rest on your laurels. I want to play like we're a point behind, and people have to get out. And we've seen great early voting. The Republican Party's changed so much, and so many people are going out early. But But to your point, I literally have been tweeting every month for the last year. There will be an October surprise because that's what they always do. It's their game plan. Remember, Bill Clinton. You used to talk about the October surprise as something that they pop on you so late that you can't otherwise disprove it, which takes you down by 5 points in the polls. And by the way, by the time you can disprove it, the election's already over. And it's been the Democratic playbook for the last 50 years, and they've done it every single time. The problem, I think, the difference with Donald Trump this time around is they did it. They did it with the Russia hoax. They made up a dirty dossier, which had unthinkable things in there, right? I mean, unthinkable things were said about the guy in there. They tried to impeach him twice. They went after Supreme Court justices. They took him off the ballots in Maine and in Colorado. They put every DA and AG in the country onto this poor guy over and over. They raided his wife's closet. They raided Barron's room. I got 111 subpoenas, right? They took him off of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We had to create Truth Social just as a way to communicate. Guys, they've tried damn near everything, and a lot of people in this country will say they tried to kill him, right?
Yep.
Right. So they've tried everything to take Donald Trump out of the race. You think them coming out and saying that, a general who was, by the way, one of the least impressive people I've ever met in my entire life, considers Donald Trump a fascist.
Sean Kelly.
At this point, after 10 years, do you think this is going to be like the deciding blow? Of course not. Of course not. What's ironic about this whole conversation is Doug Emhoff, right? He's accused of beating some, could
in
you
in the street.
A witness by apparently a lot of people. I mean, this is what's being reported all over the place. Could you imagine if that was Donald Trump? I mean, disqualified, and they don't even want to talk about it. I mean, they literally don't want to even bring up the story. That's how corrupt the mainstream media is. And obviously you guys are and a lot of other people are, but I almost don't think, they'll try for as many October surprises as they can get because that's their game plan. But I think, it's no longer sticky, right? They've thrown so much crap at a wall. It just no longer sticks because how many times can you cry wolf? You just,
That's why I think it won't work. Like, unless there's nothing short of a worldwide pandemic, no story, no person coming out, no tabloid is going to do anything against a Teflon Don at this point. We know that at this point. No story is going to break the barrier between what he has going on versus her.
But guys, at the end of the day, I mean, just look at the difference in 4 years, right? I mean, come back to it. Somebody might not like, a tough tweet. My father's a very direct guy, and I love. Listen, we're New Yorkers, right? We love direct, no BS, kind of tough. But people haven't gotten a wage increase. More people working 3-4 jobs than ever before. 25% of this country is behind on their electrical bills. This is the United States of America. How the hell is 25% of the country behind on electrical bills? You have the highest credit card debt in history in this country. And by the way, no one talks about the fact that that's before the buy now pay later schemes, right? Which is hundreds of billions of dollars. No one talks about that. Nothing's working, right? All the while you've had 10% inflation, compounding inflation, damn near it. Anybody who actually thinks that, the 6% inflation number is a real number, anybody who runs a business knows that these are kind of fake numbers. So you've had stagnation in wage growth, you've had massive inflation, so you've created this massive kind of delta. People are so crammed down, they're losing the American dream, nothing works. I mean, imagine being like a 22-year-old kid who falls in love, comes out of college, comes out of school, wants to buy a house. So housing is double based on inflation. The fact that every 2x4 is now $12 versus, $2 under my father, fuel costs, everything else, building materials. And now you have to go out and get a mortgage for what? 8%? 9% if you can even get financing on it. I mean, they've made the American dream unaffordable, and everybody realizes that. And I don't care how many times somebody comes out and makes up these silly sound bites that we've heard for 50 years. They've called every Republican for 50 years a fascist. It's kind of interesting that they call my father a fascist, whereas he's the one guy who didn't want to get into a war. He's the one guy who pulled us out of every single war. Sure. Isn't that kind of ironic, right? I mean, he criticizes the greatest war machine in the history of the world, which has become us over the last 20 years. He kept us out of every single war, yet they call him a fascist. I mean, I kind of find that a little ironic, right?
Mm-hmm. Question in regards to what you said earlier. You said, it's at a point that Biden may actually vote for Trump, right? Obviously, you're joking when you're saying that, but maybe you're not fully joking. Yesterday, the story comes out, Rob, if you got the clip with Hunter Biden pardon. And when you see, is this the clip of that?
It is. This is the president on an interview with Hugh Hewitt.
Go for it. Hugh Hewitt. Go for it.
Will you pardon Hunter Biden?
I wouldn't take it off the books. See, unlike Joe Biden, despite what they've done to me and after me so viciously, despite what, and Hunter's a bad boy. There's no question about it. He's been a bad boy. All you have to do is see the laptop from hell. But I happen to think it's very bad for the country. I think you know this, but most people don't because most people aren't of your talent. I could have gone after Hillary. I could have gotten Hillary Clinton very easily. And when they said lock her up, whenever they said lock her, they start shooting 30,000 people, lock her up. What did I do? I always said, take it easy, just relax. We're winning. Take it easy. I could have had her put in jail. And I decided I didn't want to do that. I thought it would look terrible if you had the wife of the President of the United States put in jail. I thought it would be very bad if you did that.
Robbie Composite, the phone has got. So a part of this, I mean, I wonder how Joe is watching this. Yeah. Does Joe watch this and say, well, I mean, if Kamala gets elected, Hunter's going to get, pardoned anyways? Or does he watch it and say, this guy's going to pardon my, and then part of it strategically for President, your father, for him to say, we're going to pardon Hunter Biden and that's on the table. That's a big curveball for the opposition.
I hope he does. Honestly, I hope he does. I've probably seen legal lawfare unlike anybody else in the history of this country. I'm the most subpoenaed person in the history of this country because they couldn't get to my father through the executive branch. So guess what they did? They came after the guy who ran a company, right? And I had 111 subpoenas. And these aren't like baby subpoenas, right? These are subpoenas from, the top senators, top congressmen. They came after us, give us every single email with a comma in it. I mean, literally, they would just copy subpoenas. You'd literally have, the House copying Senate, subpoenas. You'd have AGs and DAs copying Senate subpoenas because they didn't want to do their own work and just, guys, I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars worth of legal fees. I'm a guy who's never gotten a speeding ticket. I'm a guy who, no problems in my life, no bad habits, and it's the legal lawfare. It just as bad as Hunter's been, and he went around the world and he ripped off everything. And he sold influences and give me a break, right? Finger painting. I mean, he's selling these shitty pictures to the Chinese businessmen or whoever the hell it is for 200 grand. I mean, could you possibly imagine? I mean, I literally went to the Supreme Court because a wine bar 2 miles away from one of our hotels said that we were violating the emoluments clause of the Constitution because they sent somebody into our hotel to buy a glass of wine who was from a different country, and literally, they walk in the front entrance, sit up at the bar, buy a glass of wine, and a wine bar sues us, saying that we're violating the emoluments. Yet Hunter Biden's going out, right? Hotels, which we've been running, by the way, for 50 years, a fourth generation real estate. Yet, Hunter Biden's going out and selling, kind of finger art to people. At the same time, we can't divulge into this country where we go after, presidential kids. All right, when you see Barron's room get raided by the FBI, like, stop, guys. It's gone into turmoil, and Hunter's a bad kid. There's no question about it. The kid's got real problems, right? And by the way, the drug side of it, I can't tell you how many friends I have that have fallen into into that world, and you guys know so many as well. And that side of it breaks my heart. The side of him being kind of a dirtbag in terms of peddling influence all over the place. Hey, you run a great company. You have a website. Well, where's Hunter Biden's website? What's he selling? Yeah. Right. And we all know the answer to the question, right? I'm asking rhetorical questions at this point, but why do you need 50 shell entities? Like, what product are you? You're not selling these beautiful hats. You're not selling T-shirts. You're not a media company. You're not selling ads. What the hell are you selling? But despite that, I think we get in a very, very dangerous spot if we create a kind of a precipice where you just go after everybody's children, their wives, their family. What's going to end up actually happening in this country, it's already happened. You're just not going to have any good candidates because everybody's going to say, I'm not signing up for this crap. It's not worth it, right? So you're going to end up dealing with mediocrity, which is exactly what we're seeing with Kamala Harris. That's the type of people you're going to have running in the United States of America. And if that's the country we become, guys, we don't have a chance against these killers like China. I know the games that these people play. You do as well. They are out for one goal, and that's to win. They're the George Steinbrenner of countries, right? they are out to win. And you start doing this, you allow legal lawfare to exist. I mean, look at DOJ going after Elon Musk yesterday because he goes, listen, I'm going to give a raffle, $1 million. DOJ pops up, about 3 seconds later. It's the same DOJ that sent the number 3 person from Washington, D.C. The number 3 person of the DOJ went from Washington, D.C. into New York City, right? With the sole intent of every single day working on prosecuting Donald Trump and racking up as many felonies that they possibly can. guys, we can't be that country. We're no better than Venezuela if we are.
You said, I hope he does pardon Hunter Biden. I mean, that's not a lightweight statement right there. That's pretty intense. Would you mind going deeper, meaning, because you know what it's like. You said you've been subpoenaed more than possibly anybody in the country over 1,000 times. How many times did you say it was?
111.
Okay, going into Barron's room. But there's also another component. There's the I'm a bigger person. Yeah. I have the ability to unite the country. Trump has the ability to almost rewrite his legacy. Yeah. Like, when's the last time a president came back and won again? It was like Grover Cleveland 100 years ago. Yeah. He's about to do something that hasn't been done in 100 years. It's very impressive. But the unifying the divided states of America, I think, is something that he has the capability 100%. To do if he's able to do things like that. So pardoning Hunter Biden would almost be symbolic, saying, this is a great way to start my second term. Yeah. Could you go deeper on that, more the emotional component, not just the legal component?
I think he's at a point right now. And listen, I say this as a son, but I really mean it, and I really mean it from my heart. I think he's at a point where he's at the precipice of truly being a transformational. He was transformational in terms of the acts of kind of 2016 to 2020, right? Trade deals, making everybody realize we were being ripped off. The immigration. I mean, so many of the things that he focused on. Kind of putting America first. Kind of exposing the deep state. Might be his greatest accomplishment is just exposing kind of the true corruption. If he wins in 12 days, I really think he'll be on the precipice of going down as truly one of the greatest, most iconic leaders in American history, if not the world, right? Guys, they threw everything. Aside from all the things that kind of list I went through, right? Trying to deplatform him, take his voice, take his freedom of speech, impeach him, go after every single person around him, go after his family, put him in jail, everything that they've tried to do. If he's able to beat that, then beat the mainstream media, right? Who, again, the 92% negative coverage of him. One person, maybe one person with me and a few other people around him who've kind of stood on that stage every single day. He beats the media. He beats the deep state. He beats all the nonsense, right? He beats every effort to kind of take him down. And he gets back into office and he does what he says. He fixes the economy. He fixes prices. He fixes, gas prices. He renegotiates trade deals, which absolutely infuriate me because we were getting absolutely bamboozled all around, the world. He restores freedom of speech. He does that with Elon because obviously Elon's on a tear about this, but he's right. I mean, listen, guys, this is for our First Amendment right. This isn't the 20. No, this is our First Amendment.
Numero uno.
Brings religion back to society, allows faith again in society. It gets government out of people's lives. It does great accomplishments, lands that person on Mars, right? I mean, keeps us as the true superpower in spite of everything that they threw in his face. His face should be up on Mount Rushmore, right?
You got to respect that.
And I'm not saying that as a son. I'm saying you got to respect that. That's one man taking on every institution that's been weaponized against America, and he did it by himself. By himself with the American people, who are pissed off and fed up. I think it will cement him as truly one of the most transformative leaders in the history of this country. I really mean that.
I agree. And by the way, you're talking about Hunter Biden. It's obvious that there's so many people concerned about Hunter Biden that he may not have access to some of the stuff that he likes, that even Theo Vaughn, if you can pull this clip, he was concerned about what Hunter may not have access to anymore. Go ahead.
Because the cocaine in this country anymore, and that seems like a crazy thing to say. You can't even do cocaine in this country anymore, and that seems like a crazy thing to say. And don't say that. Don't say that. I said it. But don't say that anymore. The last one I went to, some dude selling a fucking boat at one of them.
Exactly.
And we're like, we're trying to.
He said it's so bad in this country, you can't buy cocaine anymore.
PBD, can I ask you a question?
But go ahead. But the thing with Theo is you got to. There's something very special about this guy. He's sitting with JD. I've not seen Vance laugh like that the way he just did. Yeah. But go ahead. What's your question?
This is the third component to what you always talk about. It's the humanization of people. PBD has a great phrase where, especially with your father, I mean, I can't think of anybody that it's more pronounced with, where when you're young, you idolize someone and then they go into villainization, demonizing, and then it's humanizing. Yeah. I mean, once you lose your life, you get shot. I mean, Trump is more human than ever, and to err is to human. But Theo does a great job. Like the whole cocaine conversation with your dad.
Where are you going, Adam?
I'm just saying the human element. Right. Like you asked Trump this exact question. Right. Basically, and Eric kind of touched on that. There's this human component that we're seeing with Trump.
I'm going
that
to
a lot
a
of
place.
people,
Are you asking
I'm not
a question?
going to do cocaine right now, Pat. It's
no,
not going to happen.
Is it a question or is it,
what
are
I'm
you
saying
wanting
is-
to legalize cocaine and you're asking him a favor? It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Okay,
You're going to
fine.
say if the brothers.
then I have no
I'm
more
not
questions.
Listen, forgive me for him wanting to take
don't
this
you
angle.
think-
Besides being late.
Don't use the podcast as a method of favor to ask the man's son. Okay, we're going to pause.
We're humanizing
No,
is
we're
what
going to
I'm
cut this.
saying.
Rob, can you do me a favor, Rob? So if you can go to Elon Musk, it's interesting because Eric's talking about freedom of speech. Elon Musk tweets out something yesterday. Just go to Elon's Twitter account if you could. And it showed what Americans value the most. Go a little bit lower. You'll see the poll. Elon tweets 50 times a day. So you're going to have to keep going. You'll see a poll that's red. No, keep going. Right there. Zoom into that. If you can, just a box. 63% indicate of Americans that free speech is very important. 1 is inflation, 2 is free speech, healthcare, abortion, crime, gun policy, Supreme Court, education, immigration. By the way, immigration is 51%. Look where freedom of speech is at. Foreign conflicts or terrorism, climate change, which, again, 41%, racial and ethnic inequality. That's at the bottom. That's what they're campaigning on.
Yeah.
And I think this is the part that they don't understand. Like, what is important to America? Racism. Really? You're going to bring up racism as if it's still the 50s and 60s? Climate change. Okay, so you want to pitch your, whatever, the $30 trillion. No. Americans are sitting there at the basic level. Life is too expensive. Freedom of speech. Yesterday, I had Mike Benz on. Was it yesterday right? Or 2 days ago?
2 days ago.
Mike Benz was here. I'm sure you know who Mike Benz is. He does a great job with the podcast. And I'm asking him a question. I'm like, okay. So I said, I want you to be the devil's advocate right now. Okay, you're the evil, the Dr. Evil. Okay, and the establishment has hired you, and he doesn't call it deep state anymore. He calls it the blob. Right? Say the establishment's hired you, from the left or the right. They've hired you. We need a creative method for you to figure out a way to make sure Trump doesn't get into the White House. Okay, creative way. How do you go about doing it? And by the way, if you do, you'll get a get-out-of-jail card for the rest of your life. How do you do it? And he starts going through this whole thing, and he plays this clip, Rob. If you can play this clip from, I think it's
Jamie Raskin.
Jamie Raskin. If you can play that, you have it somewhere. And he plays this clip of him saying this 2 months ago. Go ahead, Rob.
Put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because
who says this?
the nine
a guy
justices,
that wants it.
not all of them,
a guy that
but
wants it.
These justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection.
scumbag.
Simply
He is the
do
worst.
not
Yeah,
want
right there.
to.
By the way, half the subpoenas I got were from that guy right there. It's amazing, right? I mean, there wasn't a day that Jamie Raskin wasn't firing off subpoenas to us. But at the end of the day, guys, it would actually be like the worst predicament you could be in, right? If you had this kind of game theory, which is, you get out of jail for the rest of your life if you figure out an actual narrative that gets her elected. The problem is you can't go back and erase 4 years of absolute incompetence, right? It's, you have a company that's listed on a stock exchange that just absolutely fails, misses its earnings every single year over a 10-year period of time. Congratulations. You're going to have zero consumer confidence, in that company, short of a major overhaul of all the board members and the CEO and the COO and everything else. Those people are going to be removed. How can you bamboozle? I mean, you can't. People in this country are damn smart. They're damn smart, right? I mean, they can see a phony from a million miles away. They know when these people aren't answering questions. They listen to responses like this. I mean, they tied up the first, 3 years of my father's presidency going after him for a made-up hoax that they knew had zero validity to it, right? I was the guy that got the call. We hear you have secret servers communicating with the Kremlin in the basement of Trump Tower. It's like, first of all, we don't have servers in the basement of Trump Tower. We're largely like cloud-based computing because we're kind of, modern company. Second of all, like basements flood, right? Which is the reason you don't have base. The FBI knew day one that this whole narrative was BS, but they allowed it to get perpetrated on the American people for a 3-year period of time because they thought it would help the other party. Now you're pitting two of the biggest nuclear superpowers, Russia and the United States, against each other. They let it happen. He's effectively admitting right now, Jamie Raskin, that he's going to do the exact same thing. Let's try and let's try and use this article to go after him, to try and throw him out of government. Let's try and make this massive spectacle. Guys, somebody has to run the United States of America. Somebody has to run our economy. Somebody has to negotiate trade deals. I mean, they're admitting their whole playbook right here, which is just do anything humanly possible to just absolutely take the guy down. How does a society function like that? How the reality is it doesn't, right? It doesn't. You have to remove this kind of thinking from government. And unfortunately, it only goes one way, right? They never try and pull these stunts. I mean, if anybody was going to try and disqualify somebody from being president, it should have been the Republicans on Biden when everybody knew the guy had no cognition left, and they kind of stood above it and they didn't go down that rabbit hole.
But Eric, how do we, like, for instance, he said, because the article, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, it's saying no person, representative, senator, president, ex-president, shall have engaged in an insurrection or rebellion against the same. There was no insurrection. There was no rebellion. He even said, peacefully, go there peaceful, don't hurt, don't do anything. This type of rhetoric, though, like, are you guys getting ready for, because this, like you said, it's out in the open. He's saying this is going to happen because it's looking like your father's going to win.
Guys getting ready for it?
That's what I'm saying.
I know their playbook before they even run their playbook. That's how good I am at this game right now. Like, you can see the train coming down the tracks from 10 miles away, right? And by the way, most of this country can at this point, right? It was kind of back to the comment we had before, how many times can you cry wolf before people, just realize you're full of crap.
Yeah.
You can see it coming. You know exactly what they're going to do. Honestly, the best thing that the Democratic Party could do is honestly almost use Kamala as a little bit of the sacrificial lamb, and then rebuild a party with common sense and morals and values and appeal, because people aren't buying it. I mean, look at the shift of Latinos. We're over half the Latino. I mean, we've picked up 30 points in the Latino vote in the last 4-year period of time. I mean, you have Jewish students in New York who literally can't walk across Columbia without getting beaten up. Because of their faith. Like, how have we lost our damn minds as a country, right? I mean, look at the African American support, right? When you have Tim Walz, who has two accomplishments. Right? One is putting tampons in boys' bathrooms in Minnesota. The other one is defunding police. And then you have these African American communities who are saying, "No, I want safety. Like I want my kids to be able to walk to school without absolute turmoil." And it's their policies aren't working. Their policies are driving people away. Maybe you should do a little inward reflection, as you would if you were a CEO of a failing company, and say, hey, what are we doing wrong? Where are we missing the mark? And maybe you want to course correct a little bit, but these people are like incapable of course correcting. I mean, they're incapable of it. They're incapable of admitting they were wrong. Kamala's whole thing the other night, as everybody saw, it's, do you stand by every decision Joe Biden's made? Yes, I do. I can't imagine changing my position on any of these things. It's like it's crazy.
It's wild. What happened? Tom, go ahead and say your thought, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition out. Go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with Eric, and I think we are at the intersection. I'm making a point here, not really a question, but I am interested in what you think about it. I think we have found the Democrat Party at the intersection of arrogance and hubris, because if the people won't vote for it, what do they turn to? Paper. They turn to subpoenas. They turn back to see if they can warp the view of a constitution. If a circuit judge somewhere will give them what they want and warp it. When the will of the people is not there, then they turn to paper. And I think the American voter is smart.
Tom, let me ask you this: who do you think is the face of the Democratic Party right now? That's the most important question. Who do you think is the face of the Democratic Party?
Well, 2 years ago, I would have said that there was still the fading sunset of Barack Obama, but I don't think he's it.
Well, who is it today?
Who is
if
it?
It's not
Gavin,
him.
I think right now,
I think it's
scary. It's Gavin Newsom.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's say that's the face. Who do you think's the guy behind closed doors? That's the guy that everybody calls, the top guy that everybody calls. It's still Obama.
It's Obama.
Would you say it's Obama? Would you say it's someone
I think
else?
it's a confluence of Obama / the Soroses of the world who want to pay off every single kind of low-level Democratic position so they can continue to have influence in perpetuity. So there's a lot of dirty money that goes into politics, right? And you better believe that those guys have a massive seat at this table.
Have you ever met Alex Soros?
I probably have at some point. I don't know. I don't remember the guy, but
Okay,
I wouldn't be surprised if I crossed paths with him.
The reason why I asked this question is the following reason. Buyer's remorse, okay? Think about buyer's remorse. Where you go, you buy something, you're like, change my mind. Can I return this, right? Okay. So who has the Democratic Party lost lately in the last 8 years?
Men.
A guy named Elon Musk. You lost.
Yep.
You lost Tesla. He left you. Young men. You've lost young. Do you see the statistics coming in of young men? Just came out yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago, right?
Drop.
So then you have even girls that are being interviewed, who would
Married
you rather
women.
date? Would you rather date a liberal man or a conservative man?
Conservative.
I'd rather date a conservative man, right? So what is this? Young men leaving the Democratic
Look at
Party.
that. In the
This
last
is
8 years.
ridiculous,
Patrick,
right?
they lost Donald Trump.
Yeah, they lost
I'm not
Donald
gonna
Trump.
lie. I mean, they
Yeah.
lost him maybe a little bit earlier
Yeah.
than the rest of these people, but they lost Donald Trump. Hey, let
lost
me give you
Tulsi.
something really interesting
That's
about.
what I was about to go. Tulsi, RFK. Look at the people you're losing.
Everybody's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I go all over the place, right? You have so many incredible Democrats in this country, right? But it's different than what you actually see up on TV. Like TV Democrats are very different than Democrats in this country. Go to Pennsylvania. Look at the steelworkers. They've been Democrats for 3 generations. You know why? Because they wanted great working conditions. They wanted great wages, etc. I have people who come up to me. Oh, my grandfather was Democrat. My father was Democrat. And kind of I've switched over to Trump, but. They'd be rolling in their grave if they knew that I was voting, Republican. I go, let me ask you a question. Would your grandfather, the big steel worker in Pennsylvania, would your grandfather have approved, 6'5" guys, men my height, swimming in women's sports? No, he'd be rolling in his grave. Would he approve, transgender studies being taught to, your fifth, Guys, I left New York because there was a school that literally, it put up on the board, man, woman, boy, girl, and they'd literally I'd ask your kids to identify where they were on that spectrum. These kids are like 4 years old, right? And I asked the question, would your grandfather, steel worker, tough as hell, right? The toughest guys in the country. Would your grandfather have approved this nonsense? No, he would have been rolling in his grave, right? The reality is the Democratic Party over the last 30 years has left everyone.
Yes.
Has left everyone. And honestly, the crazier they get, the faster that whole kind of, exodus gets perpetuated.
By the way, this is one of the things when you think about. You said Pittsburgh, right? The steel workers in U.S. Okay, Rob, go to 1950s. You said 3 generations, right? Pittsburgh. When you're saying 3 generations, Rob, go to 1950s steel workers in U.S. Just Google it. Go to 1950s total steel workers in U.S. Okay, the number should be around 700,000. Okay, if you go to one of the charts, if you can. The numbers around 700,000 is what we used to have, okay? You should be able to find it. Anyways, that number today is 140,000.
From 700,000?
From 700,000
Wow.
to 140,000. If you just use ChatGPT right now, Rob, and Brandon, if you're listening to this, if you send it to Rob, that'd be great because
There
the
it
chart
is.
right there.
1940 employed nearly 700,000.
700,000 in the 50s. Okay. And reach its peak production in 69. Okay. Today we're at 140,000. Out of the top 15 steel companies in the world, 0 is U.S., 9 is China, and on top of that, go to Pittsburgh. I just pulled this up right now. Let's go look at the mayors in Pittsburgh. Go all the way to the bottom, right there, and let's go up. Zoom in a little bit. Okay, 2022 to today. Ed Gainey, Democrat. Bill, Democrat. Luke, 06 to 14, Democrat. Bob O'Connor, Democrat. Thomas, 9406, Democrat. Sophie, Democrat. Richard, Democrat. This is 77. Now this is pre-me being born. 54, Democrat. 53, this is 50s, Democrat. 52, Democrat. Watch what happens here. Keep going. The 46 to 59, Democrat. Republican.
Bingo.
Republican.
Wow.
You used to have jobs when you voted for Republicans, and you lost your jobs, Pittsburgh. And you know what's happening right now? People are sitting there saying, dude, I'm no longer the Democrat that you're explaining is not the Democrat of what it used to be. Think about it this way. Episode 2016, Rogan and I are sitting together. And whether it was with me or Lex Friedman, he said, I will never have Trump on. They've tried many times for me to have Trump on. Mm-hmm. And Rogan's like, I'm not going to have him on, right? Rogan at one point said he's voting for Bernie Sanders. He said this publicly. Mm-hmm. I think he said it on an episode. Could have been like 6 years ago, 40. I don't know what it was, but he said he's voting for Bernie. So here's a guy that was a Bernie guy. Here's a guy that was one of the bigger reasons why marijuana became legal in many different places where he's given it. Here's a guy that's a man's man, UFC fighting guy. And today, your father is sitting with him.
I know.
Amazing.
Is that not? But think about this. How do you lose Rogan? How do you lose Bobby? How do you lose Tulsi? How do you lose Elon? You're losing these types of people, and Trump, the boogeyman, is gaining them? Wait, what? By the way, today when they're doing a podcast together with Joe, there's a lot of numbers and data that you can look at. You know, Joe being the greatest conversationalist and the number one podcast worldwide. When he and I are sitting there talking, he says, Pat, I don't know if you know or not, the podcast is number one in 94 different countries on Spotify. It's not just number one.
94
countries is where he's at, right? And he's dominating that game.
Yeah.
After this, is it like, let the people talk and do their thing, and let's see what's going to happen November 5th?
Listen, yes and no. Obviously, I have huge respect for Rogan. I kind of grew up the UFCs, right? I've seen him my entire life. We've known him for a while, and share so many mutual friends. But no, I listen. I don't think you ever take your foot off the gas. It's kind of like not in our DNA to do so.
No,
right?
But what I'm saying is this the last podcast you guys are doing after him? It's done, or is he still going on different things?
It's probably the last kind of formal podcast, right? There might be other Twitter Spaces and other things with the Elons and other people, but. Again, he's just not one of these guys that ever pulls his foot off the gas. He's let's go hot and heavy all the way to the end, right? There are no days off, there are no breaks, there are no vacations. This guy who doesn't take vacation, and let's go hot and heavy. So no, he's gonna be running hard all the way through, bud. I mean, he has to. I mean, that's in his DNA. You can't turn that DNA off, right? It's almost the thing he gets criticized the most for, being a fighter, is his greatest attribute, and the thing that you want most in a person, which is. Like, can Mike Tyson turn off his punch? Right, he can't. Right, he only has one speed, and that's to hit hard. And my father, in the same way, is much like that. So no, he'll absolutely charge through the next 12 days. But I don't think you'll have any podcasts that even remotely reaches the level of Rogan, because there really is none. Right, I mean the guy's been transformational to media. And by the way, I freaking love to see it. I love to see it. I love to see what you guys are doing. I love to see what Rogan's doing. I love to see what all these great my wife, she's got a great podcast. I love to see what all of them are doing, because it's honestly is making the CNNs irrelevant. People are just consuming media in a very different way. And it kind of takes the corruption out of freedom of speech. I mean, you're doing as much for this whole effort as Elon Musk, who are out there fighting for free speech every day. But just by being successful, you're kind of champion free speech, right? And you're kind of making the others, irrelevant, which I think is a great thing for this country and frankly, the world.
While we're on this topic, the one guy that's come around, which is kind of weird, and I got a lot of slack, I got a lot of heat for it at the beginning. I was like, you're such a, I bet you're going to turn valuetainment into, see, this is all you're doing. Why would you ever bring that piece of, I mean, it was like, brother, it was insane.
Who was saying this?
I don't even want to say it,
Tell
but
me.
Trust me, it's the cream of the crop. Everybody was saying about us bringing Cuomo in here, right? And when we brought Cuomo in, we did the couple live podcasts with him and Candace, with him and Dave Smith. He sat down with Dave Smith. It was a tough one.
Oh, yeah.
He was in a lion's, to be honest with you. It was. I don't know if anybody was for him, except maybe 10 people were for him in the room. And he came around. And then yesterday, he's doing a town hall, Rob. If you got this clip with JD Vance, and he's what a great moment, right? When he's with JD and he says, hey, matter of fact, I'll just let you watch this for yourself, and I want you to react to this. So go ahead. Here's Chris Cuomo. Go ahead, Rob.
Senator, you're going to want to sit down for this one.
Oh, no.
Not unlike Beetlejuice. If you invoke the former president's names too many times in a row, he's going to want to weigh in on what is being said about him. And we have a call right now from former President Donald John Trump. He wants to weigh in. Mr. President, I know there's a little bit of a delay. Can you hear us? And what is your question for the senator?
Well, I can hear you, Chris, and I do have a question, and I think it'll be quite an interesting one. The answer should be easy. How brilliant is Donald J. Trump?
They're not laughing.
She was not happy at all.
His answer
Take
was
your
great.
time. Think about it.
Well, first of all, sir, this is supposed to be undecided voters. I would hope that I have your vote, of all people. But here's first of all, sir, of course, you're very brilliant, and we both agree. We both agree that it's important to have very smart people running our government. But here's the thing about President Trump, that aside of you, sir, if you'll forgive me for telling this story, that I think often people don't see. And of course, I got my beautiful wife here in the front row. And one of my favorite moments with President Trump is we were hosting an event for him near our home in Cincinnati a few months ago. And of course, my wife was a little bit nervous to really, talk to the president of the United States. And he asked her, what do you think about your husband being in public service? And she gives, if you know my wife, a very diplomatic answer. Sir, he really cares about the people of Ohio. He's thrilled to be able to serve them, and I'm happy to support him however I can. And President Trump chuckles and goes, yeah, my wife hates it too. and the thing that it did is it just immediately broke the barrier. And it wasn't the former president. It was just a person talking to my wife. And I think you guys were able to have a nice conversation. But that ability to relate to anybody in any environment, I think that's the true brilliance of Donald J. Trump.
So, by the way, another great moment. And if there's one person that's really grown on everybody, it's JD. But I want to focus on Chris for this moment now. How are you individually yourself, processing what's happened with Cuomo after leaving CNN, fired Don Lemon himself, him going to NewsNation, him coming on him doing all. Who is Chris Cuomo to you guys now?
So remember, Patrick, I knew all of these people, and I knew them pre-politics, right? Erin Brunette, she'd come over to Trump Tower, she would have lunch with us all the time, right? You mentioned Mika and Joe the other day. I mean, Mika and Joe literally used to half live in Mar-a-Lago. They'd go down there, on weekends. They spent a tremendous amount of time down there. They were in our office all the time. I mean, they absolutely loved us. Donnie Deutsch, I used to do Donnie Deutsch's show all the time when he was on CNBC. I'd go across to Fort Lee and film. I mean, these people absolutely adored us until one moment. And that's when my father stepped foot on, I don't even think he said a word at that point. He stepped foot on that escalator, and then all of a sudden the light switch just shut off. And I knew Chris very, very well. I knew him before CNN. I knew him at CNN. I mean, I did a show a ton of times in 2016 and all the years on CNN. And now I still go on a show on NewsNation. And what's really remarkable is kind of the ebbs and flows of these people, right? On CNN, he had one gear, and that's anti-Trump. And now all of a sudden he realizes that he's no longer at CNN and no longer really works for his persona. And he's actually doing much better today than I think he ever was. He's actually gained kind of a following because, and I actually enjoy going on his show. It's good, sometimes heated debate, but he can be sensible when he wasn't sensible on CNN whatsoever. And so, the problem is, how at some point you've got to look at your heart and soul and actually be sincere as an individual and have conviction. And, you kind of can't bop and weave. And that's what creates mistrust. And so the question is, as good as he's done coming out of CNN, can he ever fully regain what somebody who didn't have that baggage, because again, so many of the positions he took, the Russia hoax, they were truly nonsensical. And now all of a sudden it sounds like he's making sense. Listen, I'm not sure if he's any fan of ours, to tell you the truth. He's still probably on the other side, but at least he'll give honest answers and have a spirited debate and do so with a smile on his face and ask a question like that or kind of pull a stunt like that. And listen, it's nice to see. I still think it's insincere if you look at character, because I don't think if you really kind of have moral conviction, can you change like that? I mean,
that's heavy, what you just said right there. Mm-hmm. And the part that I see with what you're saying, and I've spent a lot of time with him behind closed doors and on camera, and we've had a lot of discussions about this next, I'm a free agent campaign that he's on, is the part that I think he relates to you and has sympathy for you, and maybe he's realizing that the unfairness of the media that attacked you and your family, including himself, is because his father was Mario Cuomo. And his father was a governor.
But I call BS on that, right? There should be no one that understands that game better than him, knowing that his father was Mario
exactly
Cuomo,
what I'm saying. Right. That's what I'm saying.
So if you understood that game, you should be at least sympathetic to that game, right? I would think that would actually open your eyes.
While he's in it?
I don't know, more so than the random news host who grew up through, different media markets in the country, worked their way up and have been blindly told what to say for 15 years and only got their big break in life because they followed orders. Yeah, I kind of think he should be almost more discerning than those people.
Maybe he's going through it.
Maybe
he's going through it now.
By the way, maybe he's seeing the light. Right. And by the way, I happen to like Chris, right? Like Chris and I do great together, and I love going on the show. Like I don't, and I by the way, I loved going on with CNN. I've never had a problem going into kind of.
What do you think about his brother? Do you have a relationship with him, son? Andrew?
Less so. I mean, truthfully, I think he kind of got bamboozled in New York by the very same person who went after us relentlessly, which was Letitia James. I mean, it's kind of interesting. She threw him out of the office in about 3 weeks. Tried to run for governor, got about 2% of the vote, and then dropped out after creating mass carnage in the state. Right? I mean, yeah, my heart actually kind of goes out for his brother, and And Chris and I have talked about this. I mean, Chris and I have talked about kind of, the interesting nature of being a, pretty prominent political figure in this country while trying to live independent lives. And, I mean, obviously he was in, the business world or the media world. And, Chris and I have talked about this pretty extensively, but I don't know. I would hope his personal experiences with his father actually would have allowed him to be a little bit more sensitive, at least in terms of the family aspect of politics. During the worst times, during the Russian nonsense, during the dirty dossiers, when they were trying to impeach him every single day. I mean, he was out there leading the charge on this crap, right? And, what's interesting is, karma oftentimes is kind of far too slow, but karma ultimately kind of in a certain way came around. I mean, the very thing that he was attacking us for was ultimately kind of almost what allowed him to get thrown out of office, right? It was almost like the demise of the Cuomo dynasty in New York. And so, I don't know. And I wish you would have been able to see that.
Only reason I say, I mean, I'm an outsider. I'm not on the inside. I'm not Trump. I'm not Cuomo. I'm David. I'm in a very different lens, so I can look both independently. Everybody knows where I lie and how I feel about your pops. It's not we don't walk on eggshells, and we're uncomfortable to kind of share our opinions. And we've been on many heated battles with this. But sometimes, to me, it's kind of like Bobby. How Bobby is now in, and look at the role that he plays, Bobby Kennedy, or Tulsi. Look where Tulsi was at. And now I'm a Republican. Wait, what, Tulsi? She's a Republican now? Yeah. And the support that she brings in. And even in the Old Testament, I mean, New Testament, you look at 25% of the New Testament. I think Paul, I don't know how much of it New Testament Paul wrote. A majority of it Paul wrote, right? Who was Paul before Paul became Paul? He was Saul. And what does Saul do? So, I mean, I think this next phase of independent broadcasting, podcasting that's going to come up, I think the next 8 years to 12 years is going to be very weird. Yeah. And we're going to look at it in 2020 and we're going to be like, what the F happened in 16?
Totally. Can I tell you the one difference,
Yeah,
though?
go ahead.
When Bobby Kennedy got out of the race, right, and ultimately endorsed my father, I think every person listening to us right now should go listen to it, because it was maybe one of like the great takedowns of what's happened across his life and the way they tried to weaponize the system to kind of screw him.
It was
right?
phenomenal.
It was. I would listen to it every single day because he was so perfect, right? And I have such immense respect for him. We've known him for kind of a very long time. It's no different than they did with Bernie Sanders, right? They screwed Bernie Sanders. The difference is Bernie Sanders has never actually come out and said they kind of screwed me, right? And now I see the light. Chris Cuomo has never really come out and said, listen, like I agree. I see real flaws, right? And now I realize that, we went pretty deep and it was probably unfair. And my whole new mantra in life is going to be, having at least an additional lens, right, in which I view the prism of the world.
Yeah.
The problem is he hasn't really done that. He's never really acknowledged it. What he is doing is trying to tack a little bit further to the right. It's not much further, but a little bit further to the right. Because frankly, I mean, CNN was running like 300,000 people a night. It was probably the lowest watch show on TV, right? I mean, reruns of the Brady Bunch were beating CNN at one point, right? So I think you realize it was bad. It was really damn bad. I think you realize he had to tack right. Is that for his career, or is that because he actually? So I just wish, like Bobby, he came out and said, listen, the mainstream media, there's a real problem with it, and some of the things at CNN, there's a real problem with it, and I've seen the light and I've seen the prison. And I'm going to try and be more objective. And I think I'd have a lot of respect for him if he did that.
And I will give this last one, and we can transition. And if you want to say anything else back, please. But if you don't, we can go to the next story. Is the part when I hear him out and I see where he's at, the whole concept of I've interviewed a lot of mobsters, a lot of them. And I was the first to interview a lot of these guys. Sammy DeBull, he's coming out of jail. I'm the first to interview him right after Diane Sawyer. He's like, how many views Diane Sawyer, she sat down with me, she got 20 million views. You think you're going to beat that? I said, Sammy, we're going to get more than 20 million. No, who are you? Who do you think? And we're sounding like, we're going to get shot tonight, right? Yeah. We're in Arizona. And then we do the interview with Sammy, boom. Not the clips, just the interview, 22 million views. It's like, hey, you beat Diane Sawyer. I'm like, yeah. So we've sat with him. We've had with Sammy, Michael Francis, Frank Collada, the guy from Tony Spilatra that in the movie Casino.
Put his head in a vice.
Put in a vice, or even Oscar Goodman. Anyways, I can give a list of Phil Leonetti calls me, who was the underboss of you should know who Phil Leonetti is, because Jersey, all those guys, Philly, Nicky Scarfo, and Ralph Natali, the former boss of the Philadelphia crime family. So when you interview these guys, you'll learn. And the reason why I interview these guys because there's a dirtiness in politics, like you said. At least in business, we're like, look, you're going to make $2 million more than I am. Screw it. Let's do it because I'm going to win in this way. Let's do the deal, right? And we both want to make sure this project wins.
Yeah.
Politics doesn't work that way. It's a little dirty. The Roy Cohn rule is what? Attack, attack, attack. Never accept defeat and always claim victory, right? And he's written about in the Sammy book, in the Omerta book, in the mob book. Roy, you study the mob stuff. These guys, I was interviewing them 8 years ago, 9 years ago, 5 years ago. Roy was a discussion with every one of these guys that would come up. So I think there's a part with Chris that he watches how your father has never accepted, like he's always in that offensive mode. It's the alpha part to say, I'm also not going to give in. I think that's the part
Agreed.
where
100%.
where, by the way, but there's one caveat that I'm going to say that he's not going to like. Chris, don't watch the next minute, please. Don't watch the next minute. You got a big show tonight. Do your thing. Skip today's podcast. Don't text me. We talked earlier today. Skip it. Here's the next one. I told him today early morning. I said you did a great job with what do you call it? With JD Vance. I thought it was great. But here's a part that you have to understand. Okay. Sometimes you forget that there's levels to the game, and you may be an alpha in a city, but you're not an alpha in that state. You may be an alpha in a state, but you're not the alpha of the region. You may be an alpha of the region, but you're not the alpha of the country. You may be the alpha of the country, but you're not the alpha of the continent. You may be the alpha of the continent, but you're not the alpha of the world. This is the alpha of the world right now. Mm-hmm. There's different levels to the game with alphas. I mean, if you want to, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't go alpha and do the measuring contest of where you are. Men will understand what I'm talking. That's the only thing. That sometimes you have to have this conversation. That's like, you just got to say, look, bro, there is one of that right now. Leave it alone. It's his time. Play your part. Go kick some ass. You're very important. Do your thing. Anyways, but let's transition. You said something. Russia, right? There was a very unique moment on CNN yesterday, Tom. I want to get everybody's insight on feedback on this here, which I thought it was so awkward and weird. I don't know if you caught this, Eric, or not. I'll play it for you guys. Rob, it's the one I just texted you. I don't know if you have it or not. I literally just texted it to you. You put a thumbs up on it. I think you have it. They're on this show, and they're going back and forth. And while you're watching this guy right here is just giving his perspective. Scott Jennings of Kentucky, right? He's giving his perspective, and then he makes the mistake, Vinny, of slightly bringing up Doug. And he says to him, don't go there because I can't defend you if you get sued for defamation.
Really?
Now, this is the same organization that said for years, Russia, and why they've lost so much credibility. This is such an awkward moment, maybe the worst moment of CNN in the last 30 days. Go ahead, Rob.
I got to tell you, this campaign is so everything that's said about Donald Trump and his treatment of women and the gender gap in this campaign. This rapper, who I fully admit sold a lot of records, if you've read some of the things he has said about the promotion of domestic violence.
No. What he said,
women.
he said if you're famous,
Bakari,
you can grab him by the...
Bakari, I listened to your entire filibuster. If you could just give me 13 seconds.
I give you 12 because he says grab him by the...
And so when you think about the things he has said in order to sell those records, and you also consider some of the questions that are swirling around Harris's own husband in this regard.
Oh, my God. Okay, you don't even get 12 seconds. I'm not going to let you go into the far end of BS.
I'm just telling you.
Scott, you can't go.
Listen, I love that they
wait. Rewind it. I want the audience to hear this. Rewind it right there. Just let it go and don't say anything, guys. Just listen. Go ahead.
Consider some of the questions that are swirling around Harris's own husband in this regard.
Oh, my God. You don't even get 12 seconds. I'm not going to let you go into the far end of BS.
I'm just telling you.
Scott, you can't go. Listen, I can't represent you in the defamation case.
Bingo.
We're gonna stop here for a second.
Play the last 3 seconds. Go back 3 seconds. I can't represent you in the defamation case. Go ahead.
Scott,
you can't go. Listen, I can't represent you in the defamation case.
No problem. So how about Trump and his entire family sue CNN for all the Russia collusion stuff and keeps you guys in court? I'm sorry. How about what you guys did? What happened with that? Oh, that $35 million, dossier. You forget you like this?
Yeah.
So nobody can talk about that. So when you see stuff like this, first, what does it do to your blood? That's number one. Like if we can measure your blood pressure right now. Two, do you think this is one of the reasons why these guys are losing as much credibility as they are?
Well, obviously, yes, the answer to that question, what does it do? You wouldn't believe how desensitized I am to this kind of stuff, right? And I remember you're good friends with Alina Habba. She's one of our attorneys, right? I'll never forget. She calls me up one night and she's crying. It's her first time. I think it was Newsweek did like a hit piece on her, and she's crying. She's a basket case, and and I hold her in super high esteem. And I start laughing. I go, Lena, I'm literally a guy who's out there every single day on the stage. I've probably done more on the political side of this thing. I run, $7-8 billion company. Have done so very, very well. Guided it through absolute turmoil, which was obviously the Russia investigations and everything they tried to do to kind of put us under. And yet I'm the guy on Saturday Night Live every night that's playing around with a fidget spinner, right? I mean, like this is literally, if you let this stuff bother you,
I love that.
You're going to be dead. In fact, the exact opposite. You should almost find it endearing at a certain point, right? The harder they hate you, the more effective you're being, right? And we've all seen that in our lives. Patrick, you've definitely seen that in your life. And, I actually almost take as a badge of, I know their game. Guys, we know the game that they play. And I also, you have to be able to compartmentalize life and realize that it's all a game, right? And we know where they sit, and we know why they're being told to say certain things, and we know why a lot of things are done, right? Does it surprise anybody here that Soros just bought all the, all the radio stations in this country? Do you think Soros is just infatuated with
he's a collector,
old school radio?
He's a collector.
He's doing that for a reason, right? And there's been many examples of that, and you have to realize the game that it is. And so, yeah, is it infuriating on a personal level because it's just there's the double standards exist? How in the world could a guy like me get 111 subpoenas, yet Hunter Biden, who's doing crack, pictures with hookers all over the place, doing unthinkable things, a laptop, as we say, from hell, sitting on boards of every natural gas company in Ukraine while his father is actively, trying to strip our rights to drill in this country. And they come after this guy, right? For the nonsense. I understand the two-sided nature of this game, and you have to be able to compartmentalize that. And if you dwell on it, and if you let that feed into your soul, listen, it'll kill you because there's no way to stop it, right? So we become intensely desensitized.
Adam, how do you process that? You see this, you see what he's saying. How do you process? I'm talking the moment where it's like, wait. Stop him, stop her. You can't say anything about Doug Emhoff. How do you process that?
Specifically about that? Or
that specific part.
Well, the hardest thing to do, I think, in general, and I've had to go through this, is admit that you were wrong. And admit that you fell for it. I fell for the Russia thing. And by the way, I have countless amounts of friends that fell for it. Yeah. Every American fell for it. Yeah. Why would we not think this? Every morning I would wake up and I did well for myself, and I had the opportunity to kind of work remote, work from home, and things were good. Every morning I would watch Morning Joe. But why did I watch Morning Joe? It's because what they conveyed was, here's this Republican guy that came in through the Tea Party, conservative. Here's this Mika Brzezinski lady, the daughter of Zbigniew Brzezinski that was under the Carter administration. They had credibility. So if you're just an everyday American, all right, that's what's on TV, you're going to fall for it. I'm sorry. But the hardest thing to do is say, man, they got me. What do I do now?
Yeah.
No. Trump's lying. He's the bad guy. The hardest thing to do is like, yeah, you got me, guys. My bad. And then publicly say, it's my bad.
Yeah.
What they're not willing to do, whether it's Macari Sellers or some of these other people, they do not have the humility. You said hubris and pride. What's the definition of hubris? Excessive pride. No, Doug Emhoff would never do that. I'm going to defend you in a libel case. It's like, well, stories might be true here, buddy. But they don't have the humility, and they're always going to do the blue no matter who thing. The hardest thing to do is admit defeat, admit you were wrong. And I think there's a lot of people in America, I'm seeing it everywhere, all over the internet, all over Twitter, everyone I talk to, because they know what I was and know who I am now. And they're like, proud of you, buddy. Like, congratulations. And I think more people are doing that, and we're seeing that become pervasive around the United States. And that's why Trump's going to win this election.
And everybody had a little moment, which is interesting, right? It's where the wall kind of fractured, right? For you, it sounds like the wall kind of fractured at Russia when you realized that was a whole hoax, right?
But being around here, it's a slow drip. And a lot of people don't. Everyone lives in echo chambers, and they just want confirmation bias. And I get so many texts from friends, and they're like, I don't even know you these days. I'm like, I'm the same dude, bro.
Yeah.
I'm just a little wiser now. Maybe you're the person that's not willing to look in the mirror. No. But as you were saying, sir.
No, I listen, I think that's right. And I think that's what, oftentimes people look at kind of what wants to be written on their tombstone when right. And I look at my father oftentimes and I say, 10 years ago would have been unbelievable developer, the best kind of builder, right? Maybe after The Apprentice, right, and how big of a hit that whole thing was. It's small potatoes compared to obviously what we've been through in the last 10 years, but maybe it's great developer, great entertainer, right? In a certain way, I go back to it and I say this a lot. I really think his greatest legacy is actually going to be kind of uncovering BS, right? The ability to it's like this unvarnished honesty that he's kind of exposed the American public to on so many different issues that have caused us to otherwise question things that we might not have otherwise questioned before, right? And have kind of critical thinking. And I think that really changes the world for, people have more, expression now. People are more willing to kind of, going back to 2016, I can't tell you how many people would come up to me and say, hey, they would whisper in my ear, hey, I'm voting for your father. I'm voting for your father. They no longer whisper anymore, right? And that's, guys, that's a damn beautiful thing for this country. It's a damn beautiful thing for the world. And by the way, I hope that empowers people all across the world because...
Can I tell you one more thing that changed? I remember in 2016, people being shamed for voting for Trump, especially men. Now I'm starting to see people being shamed. Like, dude, you're voting for Kamala. What are you doing?
Well, I mean, think about like the whole, we call it like the whole like frat boy syndrome, right? But think about, for the longest time, it's like, I agree. I'm going to be progressive. I like listening to what these professors say. And, I kind of believe in it. Now, all of a sudden, you've got this whole movement where it's almost cool to be like almost defiant against, kind of the indoctrination of higher education that's trying to brainwash you in so many ways. And all of a sudden, you see this young group of kids who are, in a certain way, testosterone is raging, but they're also at a fragile area in their life. They're trying to come out of college. They're trying to balance, hey, do I get good grades or do I stick up for my beliefs, right? I mean, there's a lot of moral questions in there. And a lot of times these kids are coming out to this whole point, I'm actually going to stick up for my beliefs. And it's a beautiful thing. And you didn't see that in 2020, and you certainly didn't see that in 16. I mean, the world's really changed a lot in the last 4 years.
Tom, your thoughts. You see something like this. And again, I want to emphasize the main specific part, which is, the clip we were looking at, not what Rob is showing right now. The clip we were looking at, where a mainstream media, CNN, their job is to do journalism. They're not even willing to entertain the possibility that some of the Doug Emhoff stories are accurate. Yet, anything that's even risky that has not been verified source, anonymous sources told us that Donald Trump XYZ, and they'll take it, but they will not go with one that was in daylight. All these stories, hey, allegedly we heard the story that Doug Emhoff, ... How do you think that impacts the viewers?
Well, the viewers you look at the surveys of what Americans think of news media and the trustworthiness of news media right now. It's at an all-time low. It used to be Congress had like a 21%, help me out, the approval rating. It was like hovering like congressional.
Media single digits now.
And the media is now below government in terms of approval ratings and the opinion of the U.S. consumer. And so I look at it and people say, what do you think about the credibility of CNN there? I'm like, look, it's hard to lose what's already lost, right? The American viewer is voted and said, we don't find a lot of credibility in the news media, point one. And then point two, you know what I see in there? I see it's contrived. Their positions on TV are contrived. The producer in their ear is pulling triggers. And when we see everybody 2 weeks ago use the word testy in all the news coverage, they're texting each other. The word of the day will be testy. Oh, it was a testy exchange. Don't make her look too bad. Really? That's where you're going to go with it? And now you've got the producer and everybody else was like, we don't touch Doug. The entire media landscape is in collusion. They're in absolute political collusion among themselves. We don't touch Doug. And the minute he put that out, you know why? Because it's true. Because he hit a woman in public, because he impregnated a nanny. And those are things that don't play well for a guy who wants to be first gentleman. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. And so I look at it and I say, you know what? That's it. And something you said about being in the headlines, there's an endearing part to it. It's kind of funny. We came from LA, and there was an ancient publicist in LA that the way the story goes, I think he was giving the advice to Wasserman, Len or Lou Wasserman. He was giving the advice to him. He said, did you see what they wrote? Did you see what they wrote? I can't believe what they wrote. And he said, calm down, buddy. Your name's in the papers. And if your name's in,
Spell it right.
their name's not.
Yeah.
He says, have a coffee, call me later. And it was, I'm paraphrasing, but there was that point in Hollywood where, you know what? If they're talking about you, there's actually something good to it.
Yeah,
You're
and by the way,
attracting the attention.
And if they're trying to take you down, it means you're relevant, right? It means you're relevant, and you're kind of, you know. And guys, one of the other things that's been really fascinating to me over the last 10-year period of time, the amount of times I've done articles with people, some writer will come in from the New York Times or something, and they'll leave there being like, hey, I'm really impressed with you. You're really sharp. You seem like a great guy. Obviously you run a great company. You've endured absolute hell through this whole process. And then all of a sudden you get the text later on, hey, my editor took a really kind of stiff pen to the story. I go, what do you mean it's not your story? Like, your editor wasn't in that room with us. Yeah, a lot of parts were changed, and I'm sorry. You know how many times I've heard that? Wow. Where they go back, they write something that's probably not perfect. No one's perfect, right? But they write something that they think is at least accurate, and then the narrative gets changed by a person who's being paid the big bucks, on the editorial desk, who's never actually looked you in the eye. It's
got a question for you. So McCarthy is here. Kevin McCarthy's on a podcast 2 weeks ago. We had a conversation last night because we're doing something in D.C. in 3 weeks. And one of the things, I'm mentioning certain names. I think this guy's going to run in 2028. I think that guy's going to run in 2028. We're dropping all these names. And then we go to the new property that we have. I'm showing the whole place around. And he says, that name you mentioned, I don't think he'll cut it. I said, why do you think that is? He says, you have to realize, Pat, most of these guys are not battle tested. He said, that's the one thing most people don't realize, how valuable that skill set is. You know how Roger Stone in his book, he talks about the candidates of running for office. One of the things is like, fame and, followership and influence. And Trump had that early on, and that conversation that's being had. And, even Pat Nixon telling Trump, if you ever run, I think this guy's going to be a president. Richard Nixon saying, I think you're going to be a president one day if you run, right? You've both done this, right? Which as a kid watching dad, and now you're your own man, and you're seeing it as a grown man who's seen a bunch of. You got a family. You're married to an incredible woman who's tough, who's strong, who is independent, who's got a very influential role right now. Yeah. That she's not one that can be pushed around. You can't be. So, to the average person that's watching this, there's a couple podcasters that can't handle the pressure that comes with doing a podcast. I'm going to leave because it's so hard. You think this is hard? So how do you become battle tested? When you look at somebody as an opponent that's going through, like, I don't know, that guy's going to be able to handle criticism. What are qualities of battle tested guys?
Well, I think you have to go into that battle a lot of times, right? And I think we probably face that battle every single day. But I got to bring you back to The Apprentice for a second, because I saw this from a really early age. We got thrown on that show super early. I did 7-8 seasons, and I'll never forget. I'd sit there. You had all the Celebrity Apprentice, right? And you'd have 100 cameras. NBC. This is primetime shows. It literally kept NBC alive. The irony of the fact that The Apprentice kept the NBC alive, and now they kill us every single day is shocking to me. But you'd have 30 cameras. You'd have a couple on each candidate, and you'd have a few on my father. You'd have the big booms that were going up in the air. And you'd have one of these major CEOs from one of these companies come in. Do you generally know how you're going to deliver the task? Sir, Fortune 500 CEO, I'm battle tested. I'm hardened. I will deliver. And literally all of a sudden, So what do you think, John? The lights all flick on, and they just turn to absolute mush. And what's interesting is never think that those top CEOs in this country are the tough ones, are the ones with spine. I've seen people that you would have never thought had an ounce of spine who are the toughest bastards in the world. And I've seen people who are otherwise put up on the pedestal, right? Top people in government, top people in commerce, who literally melted like a freaking marshmallow. I mean, less than my 5-year-old daughter has substantially more spine than they do. And it's remarkable to see. So I think first you have to have it in your genetics. I think you just have to have first of all, be principled, right? Want to have spine. That's important. And then obviously being battle tested over and over and over, where you finally realize, to that kind of funny comment I made about that bad article that came out about that person. You've got to finally realize it doesn't matter, right? You put things in perspective, and when you start to understand the game for what it is, I think that's when you really get the confidence and you grow that backbone that's so important. But
I know we're talking about 2024, but you've made claims that you may want to run on the future yourself. You seem like and the way at the RNC when you spoke, I think you were second to the last speaker to the president, And he has to prove that agenda. When I've run events for the last 20 years, I've confirmed the last closing speaker right before me. That's intentional. I mean, whoever ran it, I'm not saying that person didn't decide, and I think it was your wife. I don't know who ran the whole schedule, but
no, there's only one person that runs the yard.
That's exactly what but you understand what I'm saying. I don't want to step on anybody's toes because it's family and it's your wife. But what I'm saying is there an element of you kind of watching this saying, I'm battle tested, 111 subpoenas, I think I'm going to do something as well politically, and maybe you have the itch?
Listen, guys, I care. What I'll tell you is politics is just a shitty business, right? And I'm not talking about just from every, you try and do everything right. My father's probably the first guy that's lost zeros off off his balance sheet. Look at Obama. He's a community organizer. Now he owns the biggest house in Martha's Vineyard, right? I mean, something's really, Hillary Clinton, they had nothing when they came out of the White House, and she was a senator for all these years, and she's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Nancy Pelosi, her and her husband, they make Warren Buffett look like a bad investor based on the fact that it's amazing. My father goes, listen, I don't care how much it costs me. I don't care how many businesses I have to shut down. I don't care how much I have to pay in legal fees. I want to go in and I want to save this republic because we're going to shit. And you have to really care. And we do as a family. We really, really care as a family. Believe me, we get nothing out of this. In fact, we get less than zero out of this. We've gotten shot at in every single way, literally and figuratively at this point. Yeah. And so would I do it? I think I could. I clearly love the fight, and I love everything that this country stands for because we have the best country in the world. There's no question about it. You do have to at some point acknowledge the toll it takes on your family. The interesting thing about us, and people often ask why my father didn't run in 2008 or 2012, and I always tell them that the real answer, right? Despite we weren't ready. He looked at me when I was 34 years old. He goes, "I need to run this company. I need you to go run this company because I'm going to be doing something else." And here I am as a 34-year-old dealing with the hundreds of subpoenas while trying to run a many billion-dollar company, while trying to navigate kind of the turmoil that's coming out of politics. They're trying to cancel us. They're harassing employees. They're trying to cancel business. They're harassing every bride who's trying to have a peaceful wedding at one of our beautiful properties around the world. I mean, this is the games that they're playing. They put us totally under siege, and but that's fine. We had that backbone. We had been tested as much as you could have been tested between the business world, obviously the entertainment world, being on camera, understanding the media, and kind of understanding life. Yeah. But we were still virgins to this whole process. Make no mistake about it. You have to be willing to allow your family to come into that role because they will be ruthless and they will try and take them out, right? And a lot of people, it's what we have to change about this country. You're going to have bad candidates who do a bad job for this nation if we can't get to kind of a place of civility. Forget about the candidates, right? The candidates have to be big boys and big girls, right? But I think you have to take the extracurriculars out of it, and I think that's the only thing that'd be holding me back, at least at this point in my life.
So in other words, yes. So, but let me go to this. Let me go to this other. The documentary, "The Man You Don't Know." Yeah. Okay, we watched the documentary, and there is a scene which was very interesting. And again, the reason why I bring this up is I'm sizing everybody up who's battle tested, and if you're battle tested, the other guys are not. The list you got to make is battle tested guys, right? So. Wow. Any of the stuff from Trump's camp is part of that camp. So in the documentary, I don't know if it was you or Don, but one of the things is before your father makes it down the escalator, right? The whole escalator scene that everyone knows from that moment on, and he's going down. Don said, we got into the elevator to come down. If you know what what he says, when we got in the elevator and we got down, my father said something to us. He says, we're about to find out who's with us and who's against us.
It was actually in his office.
He said in his
office right before he came down. He goes, you're going to learn, two things. You're going to learn who your real friends are. Yeah. You're going to learn that very quickly, and you're going to see maybe one of the most vicious fights you'll ever see, right? Wow. He was right. I mean, but in terms of learning who your real friends were, I mean, we found that out quickly.
Let me ask you, who was that you can say, who was the biggest surprise that you said, no, that guy's going to have us, she's going to have us, they're going to have us? Who was the biggest one that you could say they thought they'd have your back that they didn't?
Oh, one of my best friends. I mean, a guy I grew up with, him and his brother. I did totally deserted. And this was a guy, I mean, every vacation, every this, every that. I mean, barring in college. I mean, just closest friend in the world disappeared like that. And then what's amazing is I had friends that came into my life who I didn't know from a hole in the wall. They didn't come in because of politics. They came in because they really believed in the fight. long before, when the New York Times was giving us a 1.9 percent chance of winning on election morning. They were there months before. We didn't have anybody, guys. We didn't have any endorsements. It was Don, my father, myself, and Laura effectively out there fighting every day, right? I mean, there was very few people and a small ragtag campaign team that didn't really know much about campaigns.
Your sister,
yeah, Ivanka was there, and
Jared.
but I'm talking about a very, very small group of people. I mean, I remember my father, who was going like New Hampshire or something. He calls me up. Megyn Kelly wasn't a big fan of ours at this. I've got a great relationship with her now, but wasn't a big fan of ours at the time. And he goes, "Hey, she's gonna kill me on immigration tonight. Can you go on Megyn Kelly and talk about immigration?" I go, "Pops, I built a freaking hotel. I don't know a damn thing about immigration. What the hell do I know about immigration?" But I go, "Sure, no problem. I'll go on Megyn Kelly and I'll figure it out, right?" And we knew, but I'm telling you, man, I had people in my life that were the greatest disappointments, and people who you never would have thought would have exited your life. I mean, lifelong friends, dear friends, best friends, every vacation, growing up together from the age of 6, disappear from your lives for really no apparent reason. And oftentimes it's girlfriends or wives, which in that case it was. And then I had people come into my life who didn't need to be in the fight, who got nothing out of the fight, who really believed, who had heart and soul. And honestly, I'll take one of them over 100 of the others any day.
It's crazy you say this. Like 20 years ago, I'm at Saddle Ranch. You know where Saddle, not even 20 years ago, 99. What is 99?
What, Universal?
Shit, 25 years ago.
Universal?
Saddle Ranch, Hollywood.
Got you. I got you.
We're at this place testing out the mechanical bulls,
bull.
just making sure it works.
Yeah.
And, we're doing very, it's like an inspection
Due
that we're
diligence.
going through.
After a lot of cocktails.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
You have to be.
Back then it was,
Even
we
better.
were sponsored by something else. But anyways, Jose was our friend back then.
Yeah.
Army days. So you get out, you want to make sure you contribute. Anyways, so one of my friends, Armin, God bless his soul, he's no longer with us. He was my guy. He's 5'7", 5'8", outside, picking on a guy that's 6'5", chiseled, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he always liked the fight, okay? And here's how his fight was. You know how he fought? He had one punch. It's the first punch.
That's it.
That was his fight.
If he missed, it's over.
But he wasn't the push,
Yeah.
and then you push, and then punch.
No, just punch.
He just punch, and then you don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully friends come and help him out, right? So we're at this place, and you're kind of like, I see him, I'm like, oh, guys, we got to go. We go, and then it's 35 guys from the Santa Barbara frat, whatever they were.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Santa
The
Barbara.
fight turns into a brawl. And one guy we all thought that was going to be there with us ran off. Cops come, we run off, we get in the car. Everybody's changing outfits so they look like somebody else. But it's only in those moments that you find out
Who's real?
who's game and who's ready for the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something happened to the spirit. General Patton talked about this. When you go to war, you learn about someone's spirit. Boom. Everybody talks shit, and then there's war, and you're like, whoa, you don't have it, bro.
Yeah.
That is insane. I thought you would for sure have it. Man, you are a coward. You just threw me under the bus in half a second. Damn, that guy's got it. Who are you?
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful
Patrick, it's
thing.
cathartic. I always say it's cathartic, and in a certain way, it's a beautiful thing when you can see, because you can get people out of your life that otherwise probably shouldn't have been there. And right, and you can also
It's a
bring people-
filtering system.
Yeah, there's no question about it. There's absolutely no question about it. Some of the best friends I had came into my life, and they would have never found their way into my life had it not been for that kind of process. And then you lose others, but you realize it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. If that makes sense.
No, it doesn't. You're right. And you almost need to go through it to be ready for the next phase, which, listen, part of the game that's exciting to see that taking place. Adam, you look like you got a question.
Well, I just want to, you said when you went down the elevator, your friends, everything like that, how much more equipped are you guys as a family, as a unit, starting from your dad to even Melania, to your brothers, to your sister? I understand your sister and Jared probably won't be a part of this upcoming administration. They say that Washington, D.C. is like Hollywood, but for ugly people. You guys are the best looking family ever to grace the White House. I mean, no joke. From everyone associated with this. How much more equipped are you guys ready now in 2024, 2025 than you were in 2016?
Oh my God, guys! As I said before, I can see the game from a mile away. I know the game that they're going to play before they actually play that game. So, and I do think we were probably naive going in the first time.
How could you not be? Right?
I think the whole country was a little bit naive going in as to what the actual game was. I always say that, honestly, I think the greatest moment in my life will be, January 21st, or, right after inauguration, right after he, leaves the stage the day before. I want to just pop some popcorn, sit back on the couch and just watch the show, because it's going to be amazing. I mean, he knows where the corruption is. He knows where the nonsense. He can fix the problems. He can fix immigration. Second one, day one. He can get energy prices down. He can fix the economy. He can restore relations. He can stop the war, the bloodshed, the senseless dying. He can put Iran in their place. All right. So, Israel's not getting shot at every single day. He can do that in the first hour that he's in office. He knows how to do it. And honestly, it won't even be hard for him to do. And to me, that's like hugely exciting. It's hugely exciting to we get it. We get the system. We get the game. And also, I think we've got a little bit of a kind of proverbial bulletproof vest on now, right? Again, it doesn't. Yeah. Well, I mean, we need he needs a real bulletproof vest, and people are trying to kill him. All right, there are foreign actors that are trying to kill him, and I know that's a controversial statement, but it's fact.
Yes.
But in terms of kind of the nonsense, it doesn't stick the way it did before because again, people get their games, and so I hope. And I trust, aside from the Janie Raskins and those people who are just fucking lunatics, I truly think you'll have much smoother sailing time too, because I think that sea's been parted in a certain way.
I don't know if you can name names, but maybe just archetypes, types of people. Who are the type of people that you think President Trump will align himself with and surround himself with in the Oval Office in 2025 versus 2016?
So let me tell you kind of the coolest thing about this journey. You had 2016 when literally no one believed in you, right? As I said, we had like that small handful of family members and a couple close people who largely came out of our company who really won this campaign. And it was an amazing story, right? I mean, you want to talk about David and Goliath. She spent $1.5 billion. He put in 200 and I think the whole campaign was like $300 million. It was like a 5-to-1 deficit in terms of, of funding. And then all of a sudden, all these people, as he did better and better, started kind of rushing in. Then obviously he's in the White House, and there's people that trickled out, and came in, and that's fine. All of a sudden you get to kind of 2020, and you had those people that stayed with you 100%, and you had those people who kind of ran for the hills. You had people who jumped ship and went to different campaigns. You had, certain, great play. The great point is we're at a point where we've seen the filter work so many times. We saw who was there in the beginning and who was stable. We saw who was there during the administration who did a phenomenal job, who really was principled and fought hard. We saw the people that kind of deserted during those years, that fell in with other campaigns, that maybe endorsed other candidates, and then we saw kind of who tried to come back with a little smiley face, who tried to make contact again despite the fact that they stabbed you in the back 100 times. We know who these people are. We know the good ones. We know the bad ones. We know the competent ones. We know the totally inept ones. And I think that's a great thing for him. In a certain way, it's like the greatest filter that you could have possibly had, which I think makes the whole setting up the whole administration so much easier. And
you mind if I really quick? So I mean, we've seen what they have been doing from the beginning, from the Russia to where we're at, to the assassination attempts, which I don't even want to get into the fact that if it was incompetence or negligence, whatever, crazy situation. In the documentary that we saw, what was it the man you don't know?
You don't know. Yeah.
Your brother mentioned something that really hit me hard, and he said something. It was something about God and the spirituality level, especially in a moment like that, Eric. Because I don't care what anybody says. I'm a Christian. Tom's a Christian. We go to church. We go to the same church many times. That moment, especially when you see that 3D shot where literally your father just goes like this and it grazes his head. How? I don't know where your guys' level of Christianity or prayer or spirituality. Did anything really change? Because when your brother your brother said something that hit me, and he was like, "Yeah, it kind of made me go, whoa, this is a whole different situation because they've tried everything, and he's still fighting and he's still winning."
So let me tell you a little bit of a mushy story that I never thought I'd tell on this podcast. I think I've only told it once before. But Mike Huckabee in 2016 during the primaries, obviously he was running against my father. He comes off the stage. I'm backstage. I went to every one of the debates, and comes backstage and he goes, "I'm going to drop out of this race, Eric." And my father walked up at the same time. He said the same thing to my father. "I drop out of this race." And he goes, "I really believe that the spirit of God, God's hand is on your father's shoulder." And I go, "Wow, that's beautiful." And I'm not sure if I really quite knew what it meant at the time. And then you go through this 10-year, guys, there are some dark days, right? I mean, there are dark days where they're trying to get you. I mean, I sat behind him or next to him in court every single day, during the sham indictments when they're trying to effectively, do a hostile takeover of our company. They're trying to cancel business licenses. We've never done anything, freaking wrong. Some of that stuff's pretty dark. And you know what? Every single time there was kind of this miraculous, I don't want to necessarily call it a light. I'm using that as a little bit of a metaphor, but something changed. and he was always guided in the right direction, right? You could not have beat Hillary Clinton, probably the greatest political dynasty, that family, with $300 million, not knowing what a delegate was going into, the state of, Iowa. Like, you just couldn't have done it. And believe me, he was being guided. He absolutely was. And I don't know, guys, you look at Corey, his wife tells the story. I'm not sure if you guys have heard this, but Corey's wife has told me several times, and my father, Corey, that day kept on saying to her, right, Donald Trump's going to bring me up on stage. Donald Trump is going to bring me up on stage. She's looking at him and saying, well, what are you talking about? Donald Trump's not going to bring you up on stage. There's 50,000 people here. How is he going to bring you up on stage? I'm telling you, I can feel it in my soul. Donald Trump's going to bring me up on stage. And
Corey, the fireman?
The fireman who was killed.
Oh, wow.
And literally during the RNC, I'm not a crier, but at the RNC, I mean, I'm fighting. I'm trying to fight back tears as you see that firefighting outfit up on stage. I mean, he was literally brought back up on that stage, and the fact that he was so emphatic with his wife about this whole story, the fact that the big American flag folded over and turned into a perfect angel above his head.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, yeah, I mean that's a shot right there. With he's going to bring me on the stage. He's going to bring me on the stage. I mean, there was no bigger stage in the world than this. Everybody was watching it. The entire earth was watching this performance, right? And he did it again in Butler when we returned that day. But then again, the flag. I mean, guys, I'm a competitive shooter. It's what I've done. I know that game as well as anybody. My 6-year-old son will make a 130-yard shot with a modern rifle every single time. Like, this is not a difficult thing. If you're a golfer, that's like a 4-inch putt. The fact that he turned his head, looked at a screen on the opposite side where the screens
Thank God
normally
for that
are.
graph of immigration. I'll
The
tell you
immigration
right now.
graph was up there, which he normally throws in at the end of these things. I mean, you want to talk about 1,000 things going right to spare him. It's not coincidence. So, and one other thing, faith is totally under attack. It's not just Christianity, right? But faith is totally under attack in this country, and we're so much better than this. Again, I mentioned the Jewish student; they can't walk across the NYU or Columbia campus. But man, the way that they're attacking Catholics, the way that they're attacking evangelicals, I mean, what is it with these people that can't just stay out of people's lives and let them? It makes no sense to me. But God has been a big part of this journey. There's no question about it, and you can feel it, and we have felt it, and. I really don't think he would be here, and I don't think he would have, that's why it's almost like he has to win in 12 days, right? I know that sounds like a little maybe contrite, but
Last question.
Why else would you be here?
Yep.
Why else would you be here?
Last question before we wrap up is story from Axios. Most Americans anticipate post-election day violence, but ready to accept results, right? Okay. 62% Americans expect post-election violence, 62%. Following November, a concern shared by 70% of Democrats and 59% of Republicans. According to Scripps News poll, this year stems partly from the political climate after the assassination attempt on Trump, and support for military intervention to prevent Election Day unrest is backed by 51% of Americans, but higher support among Republicans, 61%, compared to 51% on the Dems. Despite concerns, faith in the electoral process remains strong. With 63% expressing confidence in the vote accuracy, 77% of Americans are ready to accept election results, even if their preferred candidate loses, signaling a commitment to the democratic process despite heightened fears of violence and polarization. Okay? 2016, 2015, when you guys won, it was like, oh my God, because the opponent was a real opponent.
Yeah.
It's Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
That was not a regular opponent. That was a qualified person who went. Do you think the shock factor is going to be the same in 2024, where the opponent this year is Kamala Harris and not been battle tested, not going through a primary? She didn't go through Josh Shapiro, Pritzker, Newsom, Whitmer. At best, she's maybe the best fifth pick. She's not the real leading candidate for Democratic side. Do you think the world's really going to be that shocked, especially in the U.S., where we're going to have violence day after election?
Listen, I don't think so. I think fundamentally people want to believe in our elections, and they want to know that there's a lot of funny business that happened in 2020. You guys have talked about it plenty. I mean, I saw it, guys. I'd pull 1,000, 2,000 people for a rally for myself, and then I'd be across the street from Joe Biden. He couldn't fill up the little circles, right? Sometimes things have to pass the gut test, and if it looks like a duck and sounds like a duck and flies like a duck, it's probably a freaking duck, right? And I think a lot of people didn't feel that. Maybe they couldn't point exactly to what it was, but I think a lot of people didn't feel that in 2020, and I think that created a lot of doubt. But I don't think we're gonna have problems. I pray to God we don't have problems. We're the greatest democracy anywhere in the world. We better not have problems after the election. But I think people also expect things to be handled properly, handled fair, not be manipulated, Guys, the best years for this country are undoubtedly ahead. There's no question about it. I'm proud of the guy. I'm proud of the voyage that we've all been on, and I think you're going to see a stark difference. And I think you're going to see a very, very different Republican Party than you knew under the Bush years and you knew under the kind of past years. And I really believe this could become the party of common sense, American pride again. We got to restore American pride. We got to get back to a point where people are proud to say the Pledge of Allegiance. People are proud to have the American flag on their house, and an American flag on their house doesn't signify that you might be on, conservative.
Yeah.
But we also got to get back to having a great cheerleader in the White House and somebody who, wants to be, the Steinbrenner that we started this whole thing talking about. Like we need that so badly. We need somebody who wants to win and will do anything we can to make sure that America stays kind of in the pole position, number one spot. And I really believe in 11 days. I mean, people have to get out and vote. You have to get out and vote. Some of these states are going to be awfully close, but I really believe we're going to get there. I
love
we're
it.
going to be there.
Fantastic. Well, 250,000 people are watching right now, the last 2 hours since we've been on, just on YouTube. And everyone's looking forward to seeing what's going to be taking place. I know you guys got, what is it? How many more days left? Is it 11 days?
11 days.
11 days left till November 5th. We're running the biggest election night party November 5th, outside of what you guys will do and outside of what Kamala's going to do. But they're going to have their own thing, of course.
I might come down to your party.
Yeah,
Please do.
You're invited.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a few thousand people there. We're gonna have 2 fighter jets. We're gonna have a panel, massive panel that will go through. We have Decision HQ. Will be reporting. Tom will be reporting to the second, different counties, different districts, where we'll be going through it ourselves, and then we'll be broadcasting it as well simultaneously from the new hangar in Fort Lauderdale. We're excited about it. I think this is going to be one of those election nights that we'll be talking about for decades and decades and decades to come.
I agree.
Future looks bright, buddy.
You've been a big part of the fight, and I can't thank you enough.
I appreciate
You've been an amazing friend to all of us, and thank you guys.
Thanks for coming out. This was great. Take care, everybody. God bless. Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.